6 o'clock and made it back. I'm still not 100% from the pneumonia a couple of weeks ago, which shows how annoying its long-term effects can be and stuff. How are we doing on sound? I'm still not 100% from the pneumonia a couple of weeks ago, which shows, I suppose we'll just have to work with that. This is the first stream since we upgraded Monolith, so let's see how much of everything works. 6:03 at the Geek House. Tangier drinks than usual. Drier weather than usual. We're getting some kind of polar vortex-y type thing where it's going to be super cold and dry tonight. 33% humidity, and I've had the windows closed for like an hour. So we're supposed to flirt with the freezing point tonight, so I might have to use the de-icer spray on my car in late May. But that's New England for you. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, aka Multimedia Jay, and yeah, if Review Tech USA can have chickens, chickens and whatnot, then I'll have cats and stuff on the keyboard over here. We have some things to talk about tonight. First, we're gonna do like a debriefing and stuff like that. Does Winamp work yet on here? Let's see. There's a new version available. Shut up, I'll get it later. Where is it? It's on screen too, right where I left it. See, this is what happens. This is what happens when you, how loud is it? Ow! Okay, maybe we should just talk. We'll fix that later. This is what happens when you copy your app data folder over from one computer to another. So we're going to start with a little discussion about upgrading Monolith, the move to AMD Ryzen, and all that other lovely stuff. And we're going to see how everything performs here. We only, OBS is only using 1.4 to 1.7% of the processor now. And if I pop open Task Manager here and go to Performance, the processor is snoring at only 4% utilization, not even running at the stock speed, 3.5 gigahertz. So this is the sleepy speed. I don't even have the turbo turned on. So it's just crazy, you know. Well, I was paying very close attention. We should probably look at some stuff with regards to testing games and stuff like that. But I was looking at some stuff for like regular Ryzen's versus the 7800X 3D, and I ultimately decided not to go with the 7800X 3D. But we'll start with you folks first. We'll do comments and we'll check out like testing games videos and stuff. Let's talk about all of this stuff and why exactly I did this. So why exactly did I upgrade Monolith? I mean, I could have ran Skylake Monolith into the ground and just turned down some settings. I'm gaming at 1080p, so why on earth did I build this new computer? Sort of. I kept the case for Monolith and stuff like that. And Chico says you're using NVENC for streaming. It's one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons why I actually picked up an NVIDIA card last go around. But NVIDIA is becoming another Intel. They're getting kind of lazy in their old age. Oh yeah, we had some people subscribe too. 3 trucks for 3 new subscribers. Does this still work?
Roger, 10-4. Truckers are rolling this morning.
Well, that's one truck running me over. Sheldon, thanks for the sub. Let's break.
Roger, 10-4. Truckers are rolling this morning.
Oh, my head. 2, that was crazy. Thanks for the sub. And NMAC, thanks for the sub. Did it break?
Roger, 10-4. Truckers are rolling this morning.
Well, when you have MS Paint trucks rolling across your screen, you might as well have some fun with it. Now watch that become the thumbnail. Of course, I'm not going to worry too much about ad friendliness with this stream because we've already been demonetized. YouTube is back to their finger wagging for live streams because the system is older and cruder and often a lot more paranoid unless you're doing gaming streams all the time. YouTube's streaming direction is really something else. They really have some things they need to figure out when it comes to being a proper streaming platform. But yeah, Chico, I use NVENC for streaming. There's supposed to be support for AV1 and stuff rolling out. There's supposed to be some upgraded codecs and stuff like that I can use for streaming. I'll play with that later, though. We'll do some experiments, probably with HEVC and HLS, for with the lower bit rates and stuff, higher quality at lower bit rates. Just got to see if YouTube has upped the maximum qualities on those, because I remember I tried doing some like stuff similar to AV1 and it complained it's only on the RTX 40 series. Well, screw that. There's Radeon support for AV1, but I might go Radeon next go around. I think AMD will have more mature software by then. So the way it works right now is AMD is better for gaming type stuff, and then NVIDIA is the whole package. So if you do content creation, you generate videos, you do other stuff, you have access to NVENC and stuff. But I think AMD is going to be more in the ballpark than they are right now. So problem with AMD, and this is something I've been watching them do for 20 years now, is their Neanderthal marketing and trying to brute force competitors to Intel. Sometimes they win, but it's few and far between. When the original Athlon, which I have over in the project area, the one I kept from my first computer, when the original Athlon beat Intel to 1 gigahertz, that was a win. When AMD won the format wars for 64-bit computing with x86-64 versus what Intel had, which was more proprietary, that was a win. But for the most part, AMD puts a lot more effort into, brute forcing things than they do getting actual results. So you have to take AMD with a grain of salt. Even right now, with this Ryzen 9 7900, the per-core performance is on par with an Intel Alder Lake. So yes, I don't have screwy little E-cores, which is basically downclocked cores without hyper-threading, Intel's latest gimmick because they fell behind on manufacturing. Sure, I don't have E-cores to mess with. All cores are the same. They all have hyper-threading and stuff like that. But they are behind Intel in terms of single-core performance. Even though they have the newer technology, the per-core performance is on par with Alder Lake. But hey, 1224, going from 4.8, I'll take it. Right now, I'm not even running the turbo. Never mind the overdrive, never mind anything resembling overclocking, and I'm not even going to touch that stuff until it actually becomes necessary. It took years for the Skylake to start hitting 100% on a regular basis on certain niche things, like streaming games and playing more demanding games like Forza Horizon 5 with the graphics maxed out, and it was having trouble feeding the graphics card. So if you saw my screenshot comparison, which was a cutesy little thing I did before and after building, but I want to do some game streams to see what this thing can do in real time. But before I upgraded everything, the Skylake was hitting 100% just by driving 300 miles an hour in a Koenigsegg Jesko in Forza Horizon 5. So simply driving too fast maxed out the processor. Never mind streaming or anything. But, you get to, this is the thing. One of the reasons why I went with an i7 in the age of you only need an i5 to game, and sadly, some of that nonsense is still floating around out in the techosphere nowadays. One of the reasons I did that back in the 2010s with the original rendition of the original version of Monolith was simply because I saw what the Ryzen in advance, what the Ryzen was going to do to PCs. The Ryzen was going to introduce architecture as a factor when it comes to how software operates and the way your hardware has to support it. So previously you had nerds, you had cheap-ass nerds out there buying retired corporate or workstations. I don't want to say desktops because those run like Core and stuff. So my 10700K runs stuff well, you still have a square Intel. You haven't gone to when they started falling behind AMD and went to those stupid rectangular chips. I'm still wondering says Chico there. I'm still wondering what exactly is going to happen with some of these rectangular processors, because they're subject to essentially mechanical stress, uneven mechanical stress that's bending them the whole time they're in the sockets, unless you buy those mod kits that have like a shim and stuff like that you just put everything on top of. The current like close the clamp thing for the rectangular processors warps them a little. So, and I know that heating up and cooling things down isn't good for keeping the same shape. That's why bridges have those things to keep them from buckling when the metal expands. So I'm really wondering whether or not the rectangular processor era of Intel processors will get the kind of longevity of their predecessors, from Sandy Bridge all the way up until right before Alder Lake. What was it, Comet Lake or Rocket Lake or something? So I kind of lost track after Coffee Lake. So there was an ice lake in there somewhere. I just go by the generations. I say up to the 11th gen Intels. And then, of course, you have Alder Lake start with 12th, and now you have Raptor Lake 13th, Meteor Lake 14th, da-da-da. We'll see what they do. But either way, I saw in advance what exactly AMD was going to do to computers. So I basically got ahead of the curve and got hyper-threading. I said, well, you know, if AMD is going to take too long, I figured AMD would, well, corporate workstations, let's go back one point at a time here. You have these cheap-ass nerds out there buying corporate workstation computers with Xeons in them. Net result, power is worse because workstation processors are designed for 24-hour operation, so they're supposed to be slamming workloads all the time. They're used in environments that say, they're used in environments where time is money. So you want the CPUs doing stuff if they're powered on. You don't want anything sitting around, and stuff like that. The Intel cores of similar performance will outdo the Xeons in terms of efficiency. Of course, if you're overclocking, if you're manual overclocking and you're just turning off all the power save features for whatever reason, running your computer like something from the 90s so you can brag that you run at 5.5 gigahertz all the time or whatever, then I guess that doesn't matter to you now, does it? But the thing is, look, smartphones are the giant wild card here. This is a Motorola piece of junk Walmart special. Let's see. Just a Motorola Walmart special displaying an email from Microsoft because I was trying to get some accounts up here on stuff. But I mean, I can do everything on a smartphone with very little latency from the system and stuff like that. You know, this can function as a standard desktop computer. You can even hook up a mouse to this with Bluetooth. You know, just cast the screen to something bigger, and the only issue you're going to have is input lag with the keyboard and mouse. With this, with a couple of watts when it's charging, can do basic computer stuff. So I want systems that ramp down when you're only doing basic computer stuff. Yeah, maybe, you know, it doesn't come out to much on the power bill, but, you know, you have more heat dissipation. You have to spin fans. You have to spin fans louder, or you have to mess with water cooling, and then who knows? Sometimes there's quality issues with some of the AIOs and stuff like that. There's a guy I saw, he had his AIO clog up and his temperature shot up. And he's like, look at this, my water block clogged. I'm like, why would you want to mess with liquids in a computer system? You worry about fluids in your car. I mean, if you want to do like a custom water cooling loop or something like that, or an AIO, have fun. But I don't see the advantage. I just don't see the advantage, especially when, you know, your daily driver system should last years. And at this point, though, you think about like what AMD sells their stuff with. Like, you can actually upgrade your processor with us because we keep motherboards around for 5 years. My last motherboard lasted 6 years. 6 years and change. And it would have gone to 2025 when Windows 10 goes EO end of support, and maybe even longer if Windows 11 supported it. You know, my 6700K, actually the motherboard, the Asus motherboard I used for that thing, supports TPM2. It actually would support all the security that Microsoft wants for Windows 11. But Microsoft just artificially made my Skylake obsolete, specifically because maybe there's some Skylake era system out there that doesn't have that. You can't know for certain. They set the floor at 8th gen Intel, 2nd gen AMD. It's stupid. But it gives me a good reason to crank up the horsepower, and hopefully this machine doesn't get taken down by a lightning strike or artificial obsolescence. I don't know why I'm having trouble talking tonight. Of course, I thought I haven't done this in a while, so give myself a break. I don't think I've streamed in like a month or so. Plus, I spend time talking. I talk to computers all day with the restocking I'm doing now. We use voice gear for restocking, so I'm talking to a computer all day. I know the commands and stuff. I know probably more commands than most of the people that do this kind of stuff. But either way, let's start with commentary and stuff. We'll end up like taking an intermission or something, and then coming back for talking about the main discussion, which is what happened at Tech Videos, and probably wrap up around 8 o'clock Eastern or something. But let's see, I want to save that for later. Let me just get another tab going in this Firefox here. I'm not going to put it on the screen here, but let me just take a look at some of these comments that came in since so yeah, but that's the situation. We had Windows 11. Did anybody trip the auto mod? Nope, I'm surprised. Thought people would be picking apart my oh, I don't like your upgrade. It sucks. You should have done this. Da, da, da. Stuff along those lines. But I'm actually pretty surprised at that. Let me just load things up specifically for Monolith the Next Generation. Just go through the things that people talked about here, besides the basic stuff like, oh, nice video. So, I mean, that's cool. I got to click the heart button on that. Let's get that ready for later. So, the reasons why I upgraded, of course, Windows 11, I was hitting some limits as well. And I was curious about this chip specifically, the Hippie chip, the Ryzen 9 7900. It's a situation where I'm like, they got all those cores and all those threads with a 65-watt TDP. What exactly is that like? Of course, so far, the wattage floor that I've been seeing is around 70 watts if I run the thing in complete hippie mode and turn off the turbos, including the RAM not running in XMP, by the way. So if I do all of that, then I have basically the equivalent of Tuxedo's FX hippie chip. So that represents no progress. It's just like, except for performance. So same wattage floor for way, 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 way higher performance. I can tell you, Forza Horizon 5 is maxed, except for the textures, to not cry about, oh, I'm running out of VRAM on my 8 gig card. So I back off the textures down one setting. Everything else is all the way up, including ray tracing. But I think that's basically, I think that's just for Forza Vista anyways. So start with the extreme preset, back everything off a bit. Forza Horizon 4, everything's all the way to the right. Of course, that game had to support the Xbox One S. So I've been noticing lately that it's, I think the picture is worth 1,000 words here. Yeah, I'm making fun of Breath of the Wild, because it's the same engine as I'm making fun of Tears of the Kingdom or whatever the heck this new Zelda game is, because it's basically like Breath of the Wild. I think Nintendo is milking Breath of the Wild, as they're going to make as many look-alike Zelda games as they can get away with now, because Breath of the Wild was such a hit. Then I fire up Forza Horizon 4 and I get this. I'm like, oh, man. Generational difference in graphics with how much better Forza Horizon 5 looks. Look at this crap. It's like, really? This is nuts. This is nuts. But this had to support the Xbox One S, the wimpy Xbox, that couldn't even do 1080p. Stuff along those lines. And of course, there's this. I crashed into a bus, and because I had car damage turned off, I bounced backwards like some cartoon. So I was like, hey, you know what? It'd be a funny picture if I just drove up to the bus and then floored it and spun the tires. Like, I don't think I'm going to be able to move the bus with this little car. But, yeah, it's just it's just cool and all like that. But it's nice running these games. It's nice running these games maxed out. Probably do some game streaming later when I figure out what formats and what other things I want to use for this kind of stuff anyways. So, then, of course, I've been fooling around with AI. And specifically Athene AI. That's Athene Wins on YouTube if you want to go check out. He's multi-streaming his Jesus stream because AI Jesus doesn't have the AI Jesus, supposed to be wholesome and like hippie and stuff like that, and not even run by a group of religious people. Supposed to be all wholesome and stuff like that and be like, oh, talk to Jesus, da-da-da, stuff like that. I think one of the reasons why he's pushing this is because he has AI models down so well, he's running the risk of getting DMCA'd. Some automated system will think that he's like, you know, broadcasting Asmongold content or something because his AI models are really close to the real deals. But if you poke around long enough, you can do your little Turing test and you can expose that it's a computer on the other side. People are so worried about AI taking over the world, and then you see this. Listen to this.
Jesus, my pet mouse called Gluba Fluba Boomba died accidentally in the microwave. Can you please pray for him? Mungumij. I am deeply sorry to hear about the loss of your pet mouse. Glubber flu butter but buku boat balama boomba lumble imble. I understand that this is not the first time you have experienced such a situation with your pets. Our animal companions provide us with love and joy, so their passing can bring great sorrow. May comfort and peace come to you during this difficult time. Let us
Jedi mind
pray.
trick.
Dear Heavenly Father,
Oh boy.
thank you for the gift of companionship provided by G. Glubber flu butter boobuk but bagalama boomba lumba limble to Mungomij. Although our understanding may be limited, we ask for your loving and merciful presence to be with Mungomij in their time of grief. We pray that you grant them comfort. Jesus, my pet mouse called Gluba Fluba but
And that's what he does. And that's what he does is that's what this guy does in the chat. He tries to trick the AI into saying stuff like that. But then I get a little bit more direct. I get a little more direct when I get it on the when I get it on the fun. Well, look, you can make AI as convincing as you want, but there's always going to be a way to break through its lack of common sense and expose that it's a computer. It's like,
Jesus, can we pray for my friend Darth Vader? His kid is really acting up. Hello, Multimedia J. I clearly remember your previous requests for prayers, such as for your friend D-Snuts, who was undergoing surgery. Thank you for being an empathetic and caring member of this community. Of course, I will gladly pray for your friend Darth Vader and his child. Dear Heavenly Father,
Oh,
please
boy.
guide Darth Vader's child towards good behavior and help them find understanding. Give Darth Vader the wisdom to address any challenges they may face, as well as patience and love. I also would like to take this moment to acknowledge other viewers who have asked for prayers.
oh yes, yeah, please, hopefully his kid stops acting up so the Emperor doesn't have to zap him with force lightning. Yeah, the problem with feeding Chat GPT into these AI models is that they're still computers. They still don't have any common sense whatsoever. They still don't have any common sense. So there's a way to bust through it always with sarcasm or something else that's spontaneous that we as human beings can think up, but computers have to be programmed to think up. And let me tell you, the programming's not there yet. You can even get him,
Jesus, can you pray for Nana Batman? Some jokers causing problems for them. Hello, Multimedia J. I remember when you asked me to pray for your friend D-Snuts, who was going to the hospital for surgery last weekend. And also when we discussed whether D-Nuts is a sin. I hope your friend is doing well now. As for your request to pray for Nana Batman, dealing with some joker's mischief, I will pray that everyone involved finds peace
Does
and
not
resolution
get
to their
it.
issues.
It's
May
a
love and
computer.
understanding guide them and help them overcome any challenges they may face.
And the whole Jedi Master look, I mean, seriously. But yeah, Athene AI, there's a couple of oops, didn't mean to close those. Did it. Hope I don't loosen. Oh, those are the pictures anyway, so guess I did mean to close those. But that's Athene AI. That's Athene AI. He has the most well-developed celebrity AIs there. And then there's also Neurosama, who is basically kids say the darndest things. Some programmer tried to make an AI VTuber. Net results, he basically made himself an AI daughter, so to speak. So, yeah. Don't be afraid of AI, folks. But this is also one of the reasons why. This is also one of the things that I've been doing in the afternoons, because ever since coming to day shift, my sleep schedule is never totally adjusted. On the weekends, I can stay up till midnight without batting an eye. So I don't think I stopped being a night shift guy. I just actually started getting to bed earlier. So I don't know. I think my future is to return to night shift. I think, this day shift thing was fun one last time, but, I like staying up late. It's just, and I like the peace and quiet when everybody stops roaring around in motorcycles, which has been another thing with our beautiful weather that we've been having and stuff along those lines. But it's just, seriously. So I come home and Athene's doing his update. Maybe Neurosama is doing something, or Vidal987 is his real screen name on Twitch. Maybe he's got Neurosama doing something, or maybe I just want to, play some games. But it's been an adjustment with the job, and it's been an adjustment It's been an adjustment with the job. It's been an adjustment with going from nights to days, and I don't think I've really transitioned from nights to days very well at all. So I still have more energy in the evenings than in the mornings. I'm not the way I was 5 years ago when I would legit get tired at 8 o'clock at night and be just out like a light and up at 4:30 without an alarm. So a lot of times I take a nap in the early evenings, then stay up a little later and then get the rest of my sleep. So it's been tough. It's been tough to make tech videos. It's been tough to stream. It's been tough to do all kinds of stuff. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'll go to day shift. I'll stream in the afternoons, like 3 to 7 or something. And there'll actually be people there to watch it. It just hasn't panned out. Plus, I really think videos are going to be better long-term anyways, because videos have longer lifespans than streams. It's just like, I don't think people really watch streams after the fact for all that much longer after they go live, even if you try and make them into some kind of like podcasty format. It just doesn't work out that way. It just doesn't work out that way at all. Let me see what these comments are here. Some of which, of course, you folks are repeating in the chat. So let's take a look at this here. So yeah, checking out AI, checking out PC hardware, watching this little fiasco underway with the X3Ds and the motherboard gimmicks and stuff like that. Oops, they're overvolted. No wonder they're frying. And so people spend like $500,000 on a processor, thanks inflation, and then it burns up on them. It's so stupid. But main discussion today is about tech videos, because the tech video scene is going to change. There's kind of a fundamental shift in this as we head out of the pandemic lockdowns, and basically the turbulent creators and stuff that I talk about with regards to Twitch streamers and how they're all going to turn turbulent because the easy ride of riding the wave of the pandemic is coming to an end. The turbulent behavior, you're going to see that with people that make tech videos. The big tech names like Linus and Jay's 2 cents, and maybe even Gamers Nexus, who is changing direction and focus, undoubtedly because of what's coming. I mean, look, Steve Burke can say what he wants on his videos about, we grew the business, we're going to go in a direction of doing more failure testing. No. Steve Burke is going to pivot his business because the scene is changing. You have Linus hanging out with Twitch streamers, and then you got to think about the marketing implications of that. Twitch has devolved into the gigantic gaming streamers, and you have to ask yourself as a company, which would you rather do business with in terms and stuff like that? Would you rather do business with a gamer who's going to show off your products and showcase them, or would you rather do business with some grumpy old guy like Jay's 2 cents who might potentially tear your product to shreds and he won't want to send them any more review samples? So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that is fundamentally changing a lot of stuff. And a lot of it has to do with just this toxic attitude, this toxic elitist attitude that exists among people who have anything to do with tech videos. Just like, you can't even build a computer without somebody on Reddit somewhere be like, you screwed that up. You're stupid. You bought that processor, that GPU. What's your problem? You're an idiot. Could even be your first build and stuff like that. But it's just, people are stupid. Problem is, you can only be stupid for so long before the bill comes due, and the bill is coming due. I'll tell you that. Let me take a look at some of these comments here. Before we get to that, let's take a look at these comments from the video. What tech video? Monolith, the next generation. Go to my YouTube channel. It's in the, it should be in the main page up front. Otherwise, it'll be there when I finish streaming this stuff. So let's see here. Dan was talking about, with computer cases, I normally go for a metal side panel. As for M2 SSDs, they surprised me that it takes a few seconds to boot. So I thought of making a tech video about this, but I thought it would be too mundane. Let's put OBS over on the screen too. Stop resisting. We'll come back to the chat later. So here's the thing. I thought of making a tech video about this, but I think it would just be too underwhelming to just put in an SSD after all those upgrades. But I picked up an M2. I picked up a Team Group M2. You know, it's a brand that the Toasty Bros guys are kind of fond of, and they run a computer store. They actually exercise their hard skills, unlike these pundits opining on people's computers all across the internet. But how many do they work with? And so like, who walks the walk as opposed to talking the talk? Just trying to be a talking head pundit about technology and stuff along those lines. So I actually installed that SSD. I wanted an M2. It's a 2 terabyte M2 SSD. I've been testing off brands of SSD, so I recently picked up a 2 terabyte serial ATA SSD. But now I have a 2 terabyte M2, and all the more demanding games are going to go on there, especially the system slammers. So I got Star Wars Jedi Survivor for free because I bought the processor. So I'm going to install that on the M2. I have Hogwarts Legacy on the M2. I have Forza Horizon 5 on the M2, and I also put Elder Scrolls Online and the Guild Wars games over on the M2 just to speed those up too. By the way, Guild Wars 2, I finally get 60 frames per second in Guild Wars 2. It just took more processor power than the Skylake. It took like a processor that's 10 years newer than the game to finally get that old mess of a game running 60 frames per second. So don't cry about badly optimized games. Eventually they behave. And if they don't behave through the default engine, you get something like OpenMW where somebody programs like an updated code base for the game and it runs the assets in that. So let's see here. I got Logan over here saying, welcome to the multi-core era. And I'm like, I went 6-core in 2010. Logan, I had a 6-core 1090T in 2010 when Final Fantasy XIV version 1.0 wouldn't work. So, no. Plus, I was nodding to where things were going by getting an i7 instead of an i5 in the mid-2010s, despite the know-it-alls on the internet that were like, you don't need an i7. You don't need an i7 for gaming. Gaming doesn't use hyper-threading. What are you doing? I saw where the Ryzen was going to take things, but I predicted the Ryzen would be another Xeon, and it would have more cores but worse performance per core, and Intel stayed on top for several generations afterwards. But code got changed to scale a little better. You have some games that will only use like 1 or 2 or 3 cores. Then you have games like the Skyrim Special Edition. Fire up your diagnostic panel when the game is playing. Fire up your diagnostic overlay when the game is running and look at the per core thing, and you'll see workloads on all the cores going at once in that game. And gaming itself changed as well. So, and this is sad because I mean, I see some people out there that are still telling people what they told people back in the middle of the last decade to just build a cheapo console killer gaming PC, put all your money into the graphics card. Look, I fell behind on CPU last go round with a 2060. Never mind the 3060 Ti. I fell behind on processor last go round. The GPU receives data from the processor. That's where your CPU and your motherboard are going to throttle things. If there's like a new standard for data buses and stuff like that, or a new PCIe that comes out while you have your motherboard, which is why I did not get this processor to have something I can actually upgrade. I might make one upgrade grand total when the socket goes obsolete. Kind of like how if you had a Ryzen system in the early days, it would have been worth it to pop in a 5800X 3D as the grand pinnacle of socket AM4 and then run that into the ground until you finally had to get rid of the computer. But the processor's an upgrade again. That's marketing. I had a B motherboard with Skylake, so I couldn't even overclock. I had 4 gigahertz base speed. It would throttle down a lot more than my Ryzen will for dumb stuff like browsing the web. I had 4 gigahertz base speed. The turbo was weak sauce on that friggin' thing. For perspective, 3.6, I think I got it was 3.2 gigahertz to 3.6, and I could actually turbo it to 4 gigahertz by overclocking the Phenom 2. This thing went from 4 gigahertz to 4.2, and only if there weren't a lot of cores being used. Weak. This thing that I have now, 3.5 to 3.7, depending on whether or not the cores are getting slammed, and if I turn the turbo on, we'll have cores going up to 5 point something. Huge turbo jump, but right now I don't even need it. Just the architecture improvement with a newer motherboard, newer bus, more cores, more threads, without even needing to use the turbo. does everything I need it to do. So maybe if I slam the heck out of it with something like Hogwarts Legacy and a video edit going on at the same time, I might see the CPU utilization cross the 50% mark. And an ESO, which we know slams the system when loading assets, as it loads as much as it can, as fast as it can. Previously, we joked on stream about it because it would interfere with the outbound connection. And it was the processor would get slammed at 100% for like 5 minutes straight if I changed the wrong graphics setting, because it would reload all the assets. I've been watching the diagnostics while playing ESO. It hits like 80% and then drops way down very quickly. It also, even when I have it running off the M2, which is running at thousands of megabits a second instead of 500. Even with an M2 PCIe Gen 3, slower than my system drive, but still way faster than the serial ATA SSDs that replaced, and this board's M2 slots support PCIe Gen 4, so I can go faster if I get the right heatsink so it doesn't thermal throttle on me. Still, ESO is not pounding the system anywhere near as hard as it used to. Definitely not enough to start hitting the limits and start interfering with background tasks. So, architecture. And at a time when Intel is resorting to marketing gimmicks to cover up their inferior manufacturing technology until they get that fixed, why not? Intel 7 for a 10 nanometer chip. Did they learn nothing from AMD when AMD, in its underdog days, would put weird numbers at the end of their processors to be like, this one's the equivalent of a 2 gigahertz Pentium 4? Give me a break. Twin Tania says, I wanted to build an i9 system 2 years ago and my Sandy Bridge i7 system was retired, but the videos I saw at the time looks like Intel was way less efficient than Ryzen. The Core i5 is the best all-around processor. It won't be the most efficient, but if you have the cooling to handle it, the current gen Core i5, see, this is why it's a branding problem with Intel. This is why it's a huge branding problem with Intel. Because the way it's worked, Core i3 was the cheap junk chip if there wasn't something underneath it like a Pentium. Core i5 was mid-range, middle of the road, average. And then Core i7 was awesome. Then the Core i9 was added on top of that, so awesome and even more awesome. So, yeah. So, I mean, if i9 is the best, i7 is the second best, then i5 becomes the second worst. Intel has ruined their branding. No wonder they want to rename everything Ultra 3, Ultra 5, Ultra 7. Oh, they do have to come up with some kind of answer to Ryzen, but Core is kind of boring. Just hope they don't come up with some weird, obviously corporate marketing stuff, and they get some weird name and stuff that we're laughing about for the next several years. But yeah, Intel fell behind on manufacturing tech. They're resorting to the same gimmicks as the AMD FX series with the 9590 with its 200-watt TDP. 5 gigahertz, yay, it's 5 gigahertz. Yeah, leave it to AMD to resort to the megahertz myth at a time when Sandy Bridge and Ivy Bridge were bringing hyper-threading to the masses and doing way more than the horrendously bad AMDs of the day, which sucked way too much power, ran too hot, but they were easy to overclock. Oh, cool. So you have to tinker like crazy to get a competent CPU. Congratulations. Meanwhile, I'm over here with the Delosaurus project buying some junky old refurb that some company couldn't even overclock. I'm like, this is cool. So, but then again, I had a Skylake, so same architecture. Just blah Intel kind of just got stuck on that quad-core thing for too long. But yeah, the Core i5s have come into their own now because they're the rational person CPU. They're not going to, I mean, even Core i3. Look, the Core i3s are the cheapest chips out there nowadays, and they're not crap like they used to be when they were gimmicky dual-core. Now they're just gimmicky quad-core, but there are Core i3s that are faster than the Skylake I just got rid of. It's another reason why I upgraded. The silent aging of technology. I was in denial. I was like, no way. This was a freaking i7 back in 2016. And now there are Core i3s that are faster? What world do we live in? I just couldn't believe it until I was like, you know what? I think I should just, bite the bullet. In a way, this upgrade, it's like my PlayStation 3 moment. Last time I was stuck in a blah restocking job at a warehouse while trying to figure out what I was going to do next to maybe use more of my background and experience. I bought a PlayStation 3 when I didn't really have the money to do so. This was kind of like that, but not totally, because you folks' support over the last several years through channel memberships, donos, other stuff like that. I keep spreadsheets of income off of YouTube and income off of Patreon and stuff like that. That slowly added up. Even like a couple of people just throwing $1 here and there over the span of years. And Intel in YouTube, we know, has been getting blah with ad revenue as ad revenue is just cratered. That's why YouTube is going to look like they're trying to monetize more, because ad revenue is always a bubble that bursts, and we're very much into the burst cycle. So, as a matter of fact, I had to declare my YouTube channel on my taxes this year, not because it got big enough to pass the threshold, by the way, for the IRS to recognize it as a source of income, but because YouTube changed the classification to be considered royalties. So now I was liable, and I had to change my tax software too. H&R Block wouldn't support it. I had to switch to freaking TurboTax. I had to change a lot of stuff this year because the IRS... Now, my YouTube channel that's too small money-wise to be eligible for, as a source of income is a source of royalties now. So different tax classifications means I had to declare it on my taxes this year. Not because of growth, not because of money, but because of the IRS and YouTube doing some doodling and stuff like that. And there's probably lots of other small channels in the partner program that now have to pay taxes against their minuscule, less than an extra paycheck in the span of a year. What's that noise? Oh, it's a car. That's right. It's too cold to roar around on motorcycles, so the hillbillies around here are roaring around in cars with no exhaust. Well, at least they have heat. Hillbillies. It's part of the problem of doing these things during the day. Might as well get used to it. But anyways, yeah. So, I mean, I believed in passive monetization. And YouTube, I don't know, there's signs they might be getting more aggressive towards ad blockers, but it's just an experiment at this point. The last I heard from many YouTube folks talking about how ads work, they're neutral towards the use of ad blocker. So I was like, okay, I think I'll be that way too. But even the piddly, pathetic ad revenue and folks chipping in here and there over the span of the years that I had the original system added up to the point where I could take care of this without having to worry too much about the money side of it. So I just mostly have to get a better job on the other side of it in order to be better off money-wise. But the support, the small, tiny amount of support has added up. And I think I actually could still spend, I got to run the numbers. I think I could actually make a few more purchases to make tech videos about. What I usually do is the money that comes in through advertising and other stuff through the YouTube channel goes towards tech purchases that I otherwise would not make with my own money. It's just stuff that is exclusively content. That's what I usually do. But in this case, made a wild exception because I really didn't need to upgrade the system. But because I'm involved with streaming, because I'm involved with making videos, and because I want to play games and, have better looking results than people with their PS5s and stuff like that, and now I have a faster SSD now, so I can get something similar for more demanding games these days. So because of all that, I decided to take the plunge. Plus, how long will this last? Run this sucker into the ground. I'm still learning things too. Found a BIOS setting that sped up a little bit the slow boot speeds of this processor. It's like memory restore or something. So set the memory once, and then you only go through the full boot if you unplug the system. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I sprung for this. So he wanted i9-7, and he said, so back to Twin's comment here. So Core i9, it's like there's that meme going around with Star Wars Revenge of the Sith with "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. You underestimate my power." And in the spot where Anakin is getting burned up by the lava on Mustafar, they have like a Core i9, pulling like 400 watts or whatever. But it's just because Intel, they can get performance out of their chips, but they fell behind on the efficiency with manufacturing. So right now it's a performance issue. It's eventually going to turn into a money issue. They're going to switch to chiplets similar to AMD. But the thing is, their manufacturing processes, even if they're manufacturing chiplets and stuff, the wafer size and what the yields you can get from a certain piece of silicon and stuff like that, that's going to come into play. So Intel has to fix this. The question is, how are they going to do it? AMD has TSMC. They have 5 nanometer. They're in pretty decent shape, but they have more brute forcey products that sometimes have issues. Like, for example, what happened with the X3Ds. So AMD, I think, is always going to be an enthusiast product. I can tell you that unless the power ramps down, they will never get corporate America on board, because corporate computers have overhead costs as part of running them. So if you have something that's just running all the time with Excel open, you want that processor to slow to a crawl and, use a net top that'll go down to like 5 watts or something, but give people a Core i5, basically a laptop without the battery. Well, that's what's been going on in my neck of the woods. And they're actually upgrading the hardware early. They're upgrading to Windows 11 earlier as well. So it's been cool seeing all these new computers come in and then see them all get upgraded. And then finally, the Sandy Bridges and Ivy Bridges are going away. Actually, it's all Ivy Bridges and Haswells now that are getting retired. But most importantly, the final computers in the whole freaking building that were still running hard drives. Woo! You know how many people I saw got slowed to a crawl because their ancient hard drive would grind for 10 minutes when they started it up? Never thought I would see that with a Core i5. I remember seeing that with like old 90s and 2000s computers, but it finally started happening with the final computers still running hard drives in this place. So finally, some of them were stealth upgraded, probably not officially. IT normally doesn't support this kind of stuff. Some of them were stealth upgraded to serial ATA SSDs. So, but anyways, let's go on with these comments. Spotify 95. Let me talk about this guy here, or whoever. Spotify, you need to settle down. The things you're getting upset about are absolutely, it's not worth getting upset about. You can get excited, but don't go too wild about maybe you don't like something I did or whatnot, because if you step back from the computer and look at what you're getting upset about, it's going to be, it's going to look stupid. Nice, as next gen monolith is a powerhouse 12 core, so now I really want to build myself an i9 13900K base system. Yeah, make it a toaster for when you want to get it to slam around 300 watts. Yeah, the graphics card might need a lot of power as well. It needs a triple 8-pin connector. At least it'll help in the wintertime when it is normally cold. We don't need computers doubling as space heaters. Folks, we spent the end of the 2000s going into the 2010s getting away from space heater computers. It's stupid. We don't need to go backwards. And I assure you, folks, outside of gamers, computers are not going backwards. They are getting more power efficient. Folks, again, there are arguments about whether desktop computers are going obsolete, whether they should be retired. And the gamers are the last bastion of this. Smartphones, folks. These can do basic computer stuff with a couple of watts when charging, and they run off a battery for hours. You want your system to ramp down when you're not playing games. A lot. I got the Skylake down to 30 watts when it wasn't doing anything exciting. Would have been even lower if I just went to integrated graphics and didn't have a graphics card anymore. But any of us who still use desktops for gaming or content creation or anything, we're fighting against the analogy that we're like driving semi-trucks as our daily drivers. We're losing on efficiency, especially when you use some of these net tops. You get decent desktop performance. You get yourself some decent desktop performance, Do I have my link and it's only drawing like a couple of watts? User benchmark, multimedia, just J. Let me see that. User benchmark home. Did I log in on this for that? Let me see. Multimedia J. I know I don't have JAY. No hits. Crap. Oh, someone put an Optiplex through there. That's cool. But I did test, and I don't have it on here then. I did test a net top once. One night we were really bored, so I used user benchmark on the net top. It got like aircraft carrier on user benchmark for desktop score. So terrible for gaming, terrible for workstation, great for desktop, which is what it's supposed to do. That's what we're up against. That's what we're up against. And what we're also up against is an industry that is trying to nickel and dime us and take us for fools. Oh, let's put RGB lighting in everything. Let's put RGB lighting in everything and jack the price because it has pretty rainbow lights. Anyways, so no, Spotify. You don't need a computer that doubles as a space heater. We spent years getting away from that. We don't need to go back to it. The industry is fundamentally failing when you have Intel doing what it's doing. I hope that Intel gets back in the game. The other thing that we have to figure out, especially when Intel moves to chiplets, it's chiplets one of the reasons why I'm having the power problems that I'm having with the Ryzen is because chiplets operate differently than their monolithic die predecessors. They're a system on a chip more so. So everything changes. The architecture changes, the performance changes, the way your system is fast changes. And you have to look into other stuff as well, like the bus, the internal bus inside the processor now, because it's a chiplet. And what kind of latency is available for certain connections from certain things. It's a system on a chip. It's like a smartphone processor. You have some dedicated cores for this and that, and there's something connecting them, and there's bandwidth here and bandwidth there. That's what the Infinity Fabric is on the Ryzens, the communication layer between all the various things that do all the processing now. So one of the reasons why I went with 6,000 speed RAM is because that's the sweet spot for the Ryzen 7000 series processors. I looked at the motherboard. The Infinity Fabric on the processor is running at 2 gig. No, the motherboard doesn't even matter. This is all inside the chip. The Infinity Fabric is trying to run at 2 gigahertz. The memory controller is trying to run at 3 gigahertz. So 6 gigahertz is a multiple of 2 and 3. So that's the key speed. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get a RAM upgrade and go to 64 gigs, but I decided against it and got an SSD instead. The reason why I did that is because the 6 gigahertz DDR6000 sweet spot is for this processor. Maybe Ryzen 8000 will have a different frequency that you want to set your RAM at. So that's another thing we have to look at too is, okay, AMD is bragging about you can upgrade your processor again, but now your RAM is way more important. So what do? Your RAM matters more now because the frequency of your RAM needs to be in sync with what's going on with your processor. So I have 2 gigahertz Infinity Fabric, 3 gigahertz memory controller, 6 gigahertz RAM. That's a multiple of the two. So it's going to be like music almost, where certain things hit on certain beats. So it's interesting. This is what Chico's talking about in the chat, which we'll play some catch up on as well. You suck. You're like an hour in. You haven't gotten to the topic yet. We've still got to refill drinks and stuff. i7 10700K. 10th gen is pretty decent. Yeah, I can tell you right now, 10th gen user benchmark. Let's do 10th gen. 10700K versus 6700K. Let's put that on. Let's just link that up for browser mode. Or add that to... Yeah, let's add that to Chrome. Let's put this down here. Let's add this into the Chrome tabs we had going earlier. User benchmark, get lit up. Get lit. All right, let's put this in here. A lot of the stuff I want to look at is for after the other stuff. Oh, cool. T-Mobile. Switch and get blah, blah, blah. Shut up, whatever. Get past this T-Mobile banner. Let's see here. It's about a 35% overall performance jump from the 6700K to the Ryzen. However, it's a just shy of 20% jump to 10700K. It's an 816. I'm running a 1224. Who cares? It's Comet Lake. Well, that's what the 10th gen is. So it was Rocket Lake 11th gen? Either way. What do we have for comparisons here? Single core, you're ahead. 2 core, you're ahead. 4 core, you're ahead. Of course, 8 core, you're gonna be ahead because you have real cores. Yeah, so this isn't that bad. Plus, it's within the range of running Windows 11 that starts at 8th gen. So yeah, Comet Lake, so good, and you have an Intel processor that's actually square. Yay, T-Mobile. Okay, enough T-Mobile. See, I gotta check my plugins. I think I was running uBlock on this thing earlier. The rest of the stuff is for after, except for the YouTube impact report. We'll just leave that for before we go to the break. Let's get back to these comments here. Video comments. What are we at? Yeah, just shy of an hour. Let's see here. So Ryzen 7600. Who cares? Who cares? You have the 10th gen running into the ground. That's what I did. And you see, this is the thing that we have to talk about with regards to people building computers. Why does it even matter? PC gaming has always suffered from one major problem. It's never really worth it to build a computer just for games. You want to have something else you're doing with the computer in addition to the games. Go back to the 70s and 80s. IBM PC. Did you buy an IBM PC just for games? No. Dad would do taxes on it or accounting or something, or you do schoolwork on it. They were called home computers back when I was growing up, and they were always about being used for multiple things in the house. It was the family computer. Not to be confused with the family dog, but it was the family computer. Not to be confused with the Famicom either if you're from Japan. But it was the family computer. Mom would do some stuff on it, Dad would do some stuff on it, and the kids would do some stuff on it. It was a multi-purpose device. The computers I had in college were for doing schoolwork with, in addition to gaming. Computers I had on my own were for doing stuff on the internet with, watching TV, etc., in addition to gaming. So console killer is a cool idea, but it's stupid in the long run. Because PC gaming is always expensive. You want to run what you have into the ground. If you can run Windows 11, run that sucker until you start having CPU issues. And then get a darn good CPU and then run the marathon with that through several graphics cards. But I'm seriously wondering, some of these know-it-alls that are on the internet telling everybody else how to build and run their computers, have they ever run the numbers on how much money they've spent on PC gaming versus buying a console? We should do that sometime. I realize online costs money with like Xbox Live and stuff, but PC gaming, its weakness is always cost. It costs more to get into, so to justify it, you want PC gaming. You want a gaming PC to be used for something other than playing video games. So otherwise, you might as well just get a console. Can't come up with a multi-purpose use for a gaming PC? Skip it. No matter how much I say PC gaming is better, fundamentally, yeah, if you're simple like that, you might as well just get an Xbox or something. No plans of going to Windows 11, says Chico, but the system does everything you don't need to upgrade. Let's see. Thinking of retiring all the laptops, says Spotify. I'm going for a 13900K session with a 13900K. Must love computers that double as slow cookers. Although 13900K does drop down, Intels are more flexible in terms of wattage. When you're doing less intensive stuff, it'll drop down lower than an AMD, but it'll fly higher than an AMD when you slam the heck out of it. Let's see, motherboard has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in, etc. Yeah, spaghetti. Some of you folks using spaghetti cable for internet. That's one of the reasons why I went with power line stuff. Nuke PC says to get it to clock lower, you should enable AMD Cool and Quiet. AMD Cool and Quiet was on my 2005 system. It's just, I don't think they call it that anymore. Is it Windows 12? Something. What do we have here? Antec, but that's a Chief Tech, etc. Then there was this guy. Wonderful example of somebody who is the reason why we're going to have the conversation we're going to have today. Nonsense. The heat pipes are clearly higher than the fan. Yeah, sorry, buddy. I was looking through a viewfinder, so I didn't even see that myself until I watched the footage afterwards. I was so busy trying to make the video. It's just so instead of just insta banning this guy, I just was a smart ass, put him in his place. Except for Mike over here saying, oh, you should have bought a Ryzen 7 for more efficiency. What you have right now is like a fuel-efficient dump truck. We'll save the dump truck thing for later. And stuff. Oh, no, it's just AMD. AMD, that's why AMD can't sell corporate systems very much. But I can't even make a video, can't even have fun without getting picked apart. So it happened with this video just like it did with others. And also, just like it did with lots of other videos. Let's see, is this thing leaking again? I don't know. Also with lots of other videos that I've seen. So anything that I've seen on my channel over the years, I've seen on other tech channels. Where people jump into the comments and they're know-it-alls jumping on their soapboxes, telling people sometimes with more experience than them how to build their systems. Like, look, I've spent 20 years learning how to design these things. I run 140 millimeter fans from nearly 10 years ago in a Define R5 case from over 6 years ago, and I have no reason. I'm just cleaned it up and put new stuff in. It has dust filters and everything cleans all nice and shiny. Certainly holding up a lot better than the last multi-computer case that I did for Tuxedo. But you get somebody, they like slapped something together off a Newegg 2 years ago and whatnot, and it was their first system, and maybe they learned a few things and switched things the other way. It's just like, but the thing is, this attitude is precisely the reason why things are going to change, because brands are catching up to how tech video people eat their own, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty when they start preferring other kinds of content creators instead of always. And tech people, what happens to them? Sponsorship money is a lot more lucrative than ad revenue on YouTube. So if you indirectly as the audience, and myself included when I'm watching videos, if we all scare away the advertisers because we're an unruly crowd, we're an unruly crowd, we might lose entire channels because they won't be able to continue operating because of us, essentially. It's amazing how people don't want to acknowledge that the YouTube audience, people who watch videos, are more than capable of sabotaging YouTubers off of the platform and getting channels shut down. And I'm not talking through false flags or anything. I'm just talking through making YouTube known as like a toxic hangout of sorts that brands eventually take notice of, and they change their settings, they change their strategies, and then we don't get focused on as much. The sales come from somewhere else. And we'll get to that after the break. Chico follow up on the 10th gen series. I'm also playing Minecraft, but running Forza Horizon 5. A 6600 XT, that's cool. VRAM warning. Here's the thing about the VRAM thing. 8 gigs of RAM, of VRAM, is turning into the new quad-core processor. We've just seen, unfortunately, that AMD is getting lazy, just like NVIDIA. They don't even want to challenge NVIDIA anymore. Of course, with only 2% market share on Steam, I can't imagine why. It's just, seriously. But the thing is, you got to think about what it means to max out a game these days. I'm running 1080p, and I'm staying with 1080p because I want my native resolution without having to use scaling or risk fuzziness and stuff. I want my native resolution to be a decent size with a 40-inch screen. If I had a much bigger screen, maybe I'd go 4K. But the thing is, the only thing I'm going to benefit from with a 4K TV would be a newer panel technology that maybe looks better. I've seen that in Walmart a couple of times, but I don't want to have to scale. I don't want to have to scale my UI. I want it to run at a native 100% resolution and still be perfectly fine, readable, and most importantly, sharp. I don't want it to look weird like some cartoon OS or something. Maybe they improved it for Windows 11, who knows, over at Microsoft. But I want one screen size to rule them all. 4K might be useful besides 4K gaming and 4K Blu-ray. 4K might be useful for taking like a screenshot that I'm going to zoom in on and make a screen and make like a souped up screenshot out of a portion of another screenshot. That's what it's useful for. That's it. There are just as many small screens out there as there is big screens. Now, YouTube has been talking about catering to a television audience because YouTube is gaining market share on TVs, smart TV apps, and smart TV boxes, Chromecast, the whole 9 yards. YouTube is actually putting more emphasis on television now because more people are watching on smart TVs as opposed to computers and phones. But there's a ton of small screen traffic out there. And I don't care if you have a 4K phone, the screen's this big. Good luck seeing all the detail. But you have 1080p phones out there all over the place. People are watching with like Bluetooth earbuds and stuff, which is why I was hoping someone would point this out because people were telling me to do this years ago. One of the biggest things that changed in the tech videos is that my dialogue, my monologue, and the background noise is now in mono. I just didn't want to do like pinhole mono that sounds like it's being drilled into your forehead from a center channel speaker. But for people using headphones, it should be way better to watch now. The music is still in stereo, but the noise, I was like, I don't need a sound stage for tinkering with a computer, and maybe the washing machine might make noise in the background. I'm like, oh, excuse me. I'm like, take it down to mono. Hopefully it's all channel mono instead of pinhole mono. And, the headphone users won't get their ears messed with. Of course, there are ways to down mix if you have a good sound card for something you use headphones with. If you have a sound processor or you have something else, there's ways to down mix and there's ways to increase the sound to level out the dynamic range if you're stuck with earbuds or something. But there's ways to do that. There's ways to get around that, but why should people have to put in the extra work just because they have a small screen? Why do I need stereo sound on stuff other than nature videos? If I'm talking most of the time and tinkering with a computer, and by the way, this that we're doing right now, which is also going to be the format for the commentary videos I want to start doing about tech and multimedia stuff, which is what I'll be doing during the summer when it's too hot to make tech videos. Finally got a solution for that. Instead of having videos during the summer, if I can avoid it, having an air conditioner making noise in the background the whole time. We have that going on. But this is all channel mono as well. So why should headphone users and people with weird setups get punished simply because of their setup? In a way, it's like radio all over again. You want what you're sending out to the world to be enjoyable on lots of different devices. Let's get back to the chat. Brandon says, still rocking the 8700K. I can only start feeling the pinch when it's time for newer games to compile shaders. I can't do that and game at the same time. 8700K, at least you can run Windows 11. Still better than me with my Skylake, which I denied was getting old so much. Chico says, I had someone offer me a 12 or 13th gen i7. I did a presentation about used electronics and asked me if I want to buy it off him because he wanted a Ryzen 7000 system. He's an idiot. I mean, if you have 12th or 13th gen Intel, stop. It's like, stop. Just stop. You have a good computer. Use it. Run it into the ground. Go Ryzen next time. I mean, if you have a processor that's good enough that it sits there bored while you're playing 1080/60, you're not drawing a ton of power anyways. It'll scale down. Or you do like I do, go into the BIOS and turn off the turbo. Just use the stock clocks. Don't bother trying to overclock except to brag about benchmarks. But I'm doing 1080/60 without even needing to use the turbo right now. Even in Hogwarts Legacy. We'll revisit this. We can revisit this when things start ramping up again. But I have a huge progression curve ahead of me. Right now, I'm in total hippie mode with just XMP, which is ideally $6,000 to be a multiple of my memory controller clock and my Infinity Fabric clock, 3, 2, and 6. So right now, it's just hippie mode, no turbo. When things start to bottleneck again, I turn the turbo back on. Then we look at maybe some overclocking with third-party cooling. I'm using the stock cooler, the Wraith Prism, I think it is, with the stupid rainbow light. It's one of the things I edited out of the video because I called it a Wraith Stealth by mistake. I thought this was turning my tongue a weird color. This is a pomegranate drink from Walmart. That's what this stuff is. I don't drink. I'm goofy enough when sober, thank you very much. But it's just right now I'm not even using the turbo. When the processor starts to struggle again, I'll turn the turbo back on. Yeah? And then when that starts to struggle again, we'll play with some overclocking. We'll upgrade the cooling. And we'll turn on the overdrive for PBO. We'll play around in Ryzen Master. Who knows? I'll bet any money it's going to take artificial obsolescence. Hi, kitty. It's going to take artificial obsolescence to take this system down. Or a lightning strike. So, I am going to run this sucker clear into the ground like I did last time. Why? Because I emphasize the CPU when building gaming PCs. I'm running 1080p. Why do I need a powerful graphics card that might take down the system with more transient spikes? Again, why do I need that? Why do I need to run 4K? I don't even have a 4K TV, don't want a 4K TV. Why do I need that? That's the issue. What's so wrong about turning down a few textures that I might not even be able to see because I'm running the game at 1080p? Maxing out a game nowadays, it means 4K. At some point when the rich kids get their new toys, it's going to mean 8K. So it's not the end of the world if you can't max out a game. Anyways, what do we have here? What tech video? We talked about that. Chico, I got a Forza Horizon 5. After seeing how much better it looked compared to 4, I can agree. Yeah, it's a generational leap. It was made for the Series X. Doesn't have to stoop down to weak-ass consoles like the Xbox One and the PS4. That's the big difference. And that's another thing with console killer. It's over. It's over. Consoles are entry-level gaming PCs now. They're doing 4K-ish, but they're doing a solid 1080p 60 to start. There is no like mid-generation upgrade that finally does 1080p 60 like PCs were doing for years. It's over. Consoles are the baseline now. They're not the handicap of gaming PCs and PC games or multi-platform games that have to stoop down to run on a console. It's over. Who's this we got here? Chico says, I use Team Group RAM. It's been good. Tag says, hey there, Jay. Howdy. I agree. These console killer PCs are a waste of potential. Well, I mean, you can get into PC gaming, but you're going to have to upgrade things more soon. So a Dell Optiplex 9020 with a Haswell i7 and a 1654 gig. Have fun with it. You probably have to upgrade the power supply to go any further, but you might get bottlenecked by the motherboard. But I'm wondering about building your own systems. Building your own systems is something where you should have what you want in mind. Building your own system should be about having what you want in mind and engineering it. That's what I've been doing. I have one killer system, and then everything else is either old systems or projects. But I mean, the Toasty Bros guys, who are probably some of the best tech video folks I even watch these days, I actually like them more than Gamers Nexus and Jay's 2 Cents. They actually will take something like an old IBM Idea Station or whatever that workstation was. They convert it to a gaming PC with a Skylake era Xeon and put a graphics card in that thing. And one company's trash is a PC gamer's treasure. Perfectly fine. If you run games on that, power to you. I would never do it because I know the fine technical details with server processors. They don't scale down. You're talking higher TDPs. I would love to see a watt meter hooked up to one of those with like a 1050 Ti or something all the time, just to test the processor and see, does it ramp down as much as its Intel Core equivalent? Because usually we're talking industrial grade computers here. They have to run all the time. They're made for 24-hour operation. What's the point of them ramping down? To an extent, I see the same thing with the Ryzen and AMD processors too. But let's see. Tech videos are cool, but tech video people have ruined their side of you. Yeah, we're going to get into that after the break. As long as my games still run at 1080p 60, I have no need for a console killer. Long as you can get games running at 1080p 60, you have no need for even 4K. It's like 4K is like something to brag about now. you need to be close enough you need to be able to see the detail. But I can tell you, with a screen this size, I have problems sometimes with looking at the wrong part of the screen and losing my mouse cursor. Probably gotten killed a couple of times in World of Warcraft because of that, trying to do PvP, and I'm like, where'd my cursor go? Trying to click something or click on something to target or whatnot, and I can't find the darn cursor. DJ says, I'm hoping to copy your build at some point. Just do a Core i5. No, just do a Core i5. I was specifically curious about the Ryzen 9 7900 hippie chip, because I was like, 12 cores, 24 threads, 65 watt TDP. How'd they pull that off, and how useful is it? It does have a bit of a problem, though, where it has 2 CCDs. Fortunately, the games aren't trying to use the second CCD yet, so I don't have to worry about architecture hampering my frame rates. But I've been watching AMD Ryzen Master to see how the processor manages everything. There's also a game mode where I can turn off the CCD. So I have like a smaller version of the problems with the rip-off chips, like the 7950X3D and stuff like that. The one where the 3D V cache is only on one of the CCDs, so your game performance was very dependent upon which CCD was in use. And I don't know, because I have 2 CCDs, I don't know if I could, because of drivers that download to match your processor, I don't know if I could go X3D now. I don't know if I could go X3D without having to redo Windows from scratch. Of course, this thing has super speed 10, like it has a red jack USB in the back. I forgot what speed that was. Faster than USB 3. But I plugged in a USB 3 key because the computer had bad stick of RAM, and it was causing freezes, crashes, and it was corrupting Windows when it wouldn't shut down properly. But I went to, do I still have the CD around here? I was going to use a CD just for the heck of it, but I was like, you know what? Oh yeah, it's never even got to burn Windows to it, even though I have Windows 10 LOL written on it, and it's sticking to the desk because it's a CD. We wonder why these things got scratched up in the 90s. Either way. Windows 10 LOL. I was going to do it this way, but then I was like, no, let's just use Rufus. Let's use the media maker, and let's make a USB key and plug it into one of those fancy ass USB 3 jacks on the back. Shoom! Windows installing in like a minute or two. What a world! I'm just so biased because I was there when you were sitting there like a DJ with CDs going in and out of your CD-ROM drive to get Windows reinstalled, MS Office reinstalled, all your programs reinstalled, and now you have package downloaders. Everything's digital. And thanks to USB and how fast it is, especially when today's thumb drives, remember when thumb drive meant slow piece of crap? Today's thumb drives can be basically the equivalent of crappy SSDs. Never mind mechanical drives. Run like Crystal Disk Mark or something on a thumb drive and see what they're up to these days when you get a fancy new one. That bandwidth is what you're going to have available when you go to install Windows with them. And bada bing, bada bing, bada bing, bing, bang, boom, boom, whatever it is. You get Windows a lot faster than you would have in days gone by. Might be slower at Windows 11 if it still forces you to have a Microsoft account to set everything up. But I do things offline, then connect up to get all my updates. So either way, let's just see if we can get this thing going here. Dan says, I have Rainbow Light Cooler on AM4 running fine. Remember everyone comparing Ultra versus High, and Ultra is just fancy graphics? If it doesn't matter, run it, I actually have ESO on maximum right now. DJ says, I'm done with consoles. The proprietary nature of them are too hard to find, part, and repair. See, that's the thing. I mean, what if you have a gotcha like those batteries and stuff? Logan says, late reply on this, but the reason I pretended the 1090T didn't exist is because it was from the FX era. Technically before, but still. So yeah, it was 6 cores, but did that really count? Lol. Yeah, 6 cores, 6 threads. There was no hyper-threading. And I thought I was cool because I had 6 cores. That was the selling point, and they got sued for it. They got sued for it because of some false advertising somewhere along the line. And when it was 8350 Sabertooth for everything, I got an 8-core processor, yay! Yeah, you have something there. You have to overclock it to keep up with an Ivy Bridge. Congratulations. What did you accomplish with your 125 watt 8350 Sabertooth setup versus an 87 watt Ivy Bridge? things went the way they did in the early 2010s for a reason, folks. Let's get up to stretch, refill drinks, come back, and talk about what's in the freaking title. Because, yeah, us tech video people, we've done some damage, and it's not good. The world is changing, and unfortunately, tech videos are getting caught up in the mix. And this is the part of the pool where the monsters come out. No, 726 at the Geek House. But things are really, really quiet with the warehouse folks. So with that going on, it probably isn't going to be the worst thing in the world if I fall behind on sleep on what's usually the smallest day of the week. So we've been getting done a little after lunchtime. So I've been enjoying the extra time because I things are going to flip the other way in about 2 weeks if I stay with these folks. So we'll make the money. We'll make plenty of money beginning after Memorial Day. So that's when you're going to see me disappear, except for commentaries, because look, I bought a computer, got some other expenses coming out of nowhere. Gonna get smacked this month because April's one of the months where you pay a couple hundred for insurance for 6 months for car rentals, renters insurance, the crap like that. But hey, we've had stuff like the hero pay in the state of Connecticut for people that worked during COVID, all kinds of other stuff. I also got to do a final pandemic rant to shut all that down. There's not much numbers keep track of for that sort of stuff. All right. If the remnants of the pneumonia and not having streamed in a week don't mess with me, as well as having chicken strips for supper a while ago, not being a smart idea unless they're paired up with vegetables to balance things out. Let's see if we can talk about this. Let's begin with what is probably going to get me a bunch of dislikes on YouTube. Tech video people ruined their corner of YouTube. So I'm going to be moving in the direction of commenting on stuff with my side of the story. Not unlike these talking heads on the big channels. But I've been watching a lot of Frame Chasers lately, and Frame Chasers guy has a bit of an attitude problem. There needs to be somebody who's a bit more level-headed doing those kinds of commentaries. And that's where I think I can fit in with all of this. So I'm not going to be an Intel fanboy and insta-hate AMD. At the same time, I'm not going to be an AMD fanboy and insta-hate Intel. We really need somebody who's just practical and realistic when it comes to computers, because there's a conflict of interest with a lot of these big tech channels, because they need to make money in order to keep their lights on instead of having real jobs like us normal people do. Stuff like that. There are some things that you see in tech videos on YouTube that, if you think about how those channels operate, only makes sense with these tech channels. Like overclocking, for example. Why do you need to be able to brag to your buddy that your 5 gigahertz chip can go up to 6 gigahertz? Like, other than bragging rights. You're shutting off all the power efficiency and you're slamming the processor at a manual overclock with extra voltage for 6 gigahertz until it finally gives out, or something starts flaking on it and you're forced to put the clocks back down. Like maybe the memory controller starts getting flaky or whatever. What are you gaining? I mean, realistically, there's a lot of nice equipment out there and stuff. You should be able to get a decent gaming setup or a decent anything setup now without having to do crazy overclocking. I think we're at the point now where crazy overclocking, all the stuff people brag about and stuff in their videos, it's the stuff where you just brag to your friends about. But don't subject your daily driver to that stuff and get more years out of it, because the odds are computers are going to last for years. That's what happened to my last one. So in 2016, I bought that 6700K for $320. The regular 6700 was $300. I caught a sale. There's only a $20 difference between a chip with a 600 megahertz clock speed difference between the two. So I basically paid Intel to overclock my CPU to 4 gigahertz for me. But overclocking, if you have a system lying around and you want just for giggles to see what performance you can get out of a certain processor, go for it. It's an enthusiast thing. If you want to play around with fancy water cooling to make it run properly, go right ahead. But voltage actually will eventually kill chips more so than heat will. That's something we learned back in the electronics lab when we thought we were funny putting a 12 volt DC motor, hooked it up to 36 volts, and it was like until a big puff of smoke and it was dead. And the shop instructor was like, "You idiot, that's a 12 volt motor. You put 36 volts through it. Stop breaking stuff." But I can put a resistor and a push button. I can make it rev like a car by shorting out the resistor. We did that too. We'd hook up a resistor to the motor for our idle speed, usually a potentiometer. And then we would hook up a push button that bypassed it. And so we'd push the button, it would go from 12 volts, from whatever volts to 36 volts. And like I'm revving it like a car. It's cool. Yeah, you stupid idiots. You're running it out of spec and putting wear and tear on stuff. The formal name, folks, for those of you who get into overclocking, you need at least the tiniest bit of a formal background in electronics, and I'm going to give it to you. The formal name for what we call voltage is electromotive force. Voltage is the punch of what electricity going through something delivers. Current is how much of it is going through. Wattage is volts times amps. So power dissipation, which includes heat, by the way, which is why cranking power on your processor cooks things, and you have to get bigger and bigger coolers to not slow roast your processor. But at the core of it all, voltage is the punch. It's the impact. It's the force. It's the force that's going for that. So you can keep the heat under control, but when you have to start turning up voltages, like we just saw with the X3Ds burning up, the voltage is what's going to kill your chip. So, and of course, there's veteran overclockers out there that are like, well, gee, professor, tell us something we don't know. There's so many people out there. They watch a YouTube video. I can get 5 gigahertz out of this Pentium 3 or whatever. I'm going to buy this eBay computer and get 5 gigahertz out of it. Woo! Maybe not that much. Try to get a real job, says DJ, but I keep getting shot down even for a warehouse. I think it's vision and stuff. Well, it depends on the warehouse. I know there's a big difference in culture between warehouses around here. I'm at one of the more like professional ones, but you get some lunkhead. And you're working with a bunch of some dudes that are just getting pushed around everywhere. You get some lunkhead that's like, oh, I'm going to bust your ass and see if you'll quit. They're out there still, too. Warehousing's not totally like the stereotypes where it's all big hulks throwing pallets around, but there are some places where you'll see that. So anyways, I largely stay involved for the exercise. I'm probably in way better shape cardio-wise than I was 6 months ago because of what I've been doing. So, and they put me in the section with the most physical stuff because I came from a harder part of the building. So they're like, oh yeah, you're a big, strong dude. We'll give you this section. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting 110% in it. Even though I'm an old guy with a bad back. Well, better you than us. One of those deals. All right. Tech video people ruined their corner of YouTube. Let's get straight down to brass tacks right here, right now, with the big thing I'm sure a lot of folks are hoping I'll clear up ASAP. No stringing people along with some cliffhanger, no YouTuber nonsense, nada. Zilch. Start with the basics. I am not going to stop making tech videos. The tech video scene is changing. I think the Linus era of all these people making videos that copy Linus tech tips and stuff, I think that's in its twilight years. And we're going to see some big names change what they do or leave. I think we're going to see things dwindle down. I think we're going to see Gamers Nexus is changing direction. We'll probably see Linus Media change direction and mix things up. And I don't know what Jay's 2 cents and the other big guys are going to do. But the post-pandemic world is going to be different. And I talked about turbulent content creators. Some names and faces of people you may have been enjoying for the last couple of years are going to become super paranoid because of the dwindling numbers and things changing. And they're going to get upset about it. They may even ban people for frivolous reasons because of that. So don't feel too betrayed if some content creator that got you through the worst of COVID watching their streams suddenly is like off in space somewhere, like hysterical because things are declining. Tech videos on YouTube have not been exempt from that. During the pandemic, when we had COVID-related shortages of things like graphics cards, views dropped because people don't like watching videos reviewing products they can't buy. Now, we have the industry doing everything they can. They were able to jack prices through artificial demand. Now we have the industry doing everything they can, NVIDIA, AMD on the graphics side with Radeon. So keep those prices high as long as humanly possible, which is one reason I'm not even trying to be anywhere close to the top of the charts with graphics cards. I'm perpetually a little behind on graphics cards, not just because I'm running 1080p, but because there's been problems literally every single time. I got a 1060 6 gig with Monolith because it was the hippie card, way lower TDP than the 1070 1080 of its day. But, 10 series performance with way less power. I was focusing on efficiency for Monolith when I built the Skylake system too, not just raw performance. Then there was a graphics card shortage. Then finally that shortage resolved itself. And I'm like, okay, let's grab a 2060 with this pandemic stimulus money while we're all stuck home on quarantine or whatever, or lockdown or whatever. So I got a 2060, and then there was another graphics card shortage. And now here we are on the other side of that graphics card shortage. That's one of the reasons why I got the 3060 Ti. Both times I've gotten a graphics card in the last several years, there's been a graphics card shortage shortly afterwards, whether because of COVID or some other screwy thing in the supply chains. Dan says, I've mostly been watching Jeff Geerling and explaining computers and you. Is that? I thought it was Jeff Gerstling or something. Or am I getting people mixed up here? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Dan, you're going to have to explain that to me. But, so this is the thing. I know that the graphics card industry is full of shenanigans. I also know that integrated graphics are getting good enough that OEMs are starting to forego low-end graphics cards because they're sick of this crap too. People selling computers now are now into. There's supposedly Intel, especially with Intel getting into graphics now with graphics cards, also means that their integrated graphics coming with processors will get a boost. Apparently, Meteor Lake has gotten good enough with the integrated graphics that companies are not going to use those stupid little GT cards anymore. They're not going to do entry-level graphics cards anymore because of integrated graphics getting better. I want to see integrated graphics do 1080p 60 with the settings maxed out. Might be hard to do with the architecture that's involved and the need for VRAM and stuff. System RAM can be slower, blah, blah, blah. But I would love to see a world, especially when the graphics card industry has been so money hungry and so inept at running supply chains, even without a pandemic ripping up the world. I would love to see a world where if you buy your computer, you get 1080p 60 right off the bat, maybe at medium settings or whatever. But you automatically can game just because you bought a processor, desktop or laptop. And then you only look at a graphics card to crank the settings or go to 4K. The end. We're almost there. I'll have to see what this thing does and stuff. Now, I know that tech YouTubers will tell me, I know that tech YouTubers say that, the integrated graphics will only put a picture on the screen. They won't do very much. But they have a compelling reason. It's Geerling guy. He does a lot of maker stuff, says Dan. Anyways, those guys have a compelling reason because they do videos about graphics cards. There's a conflict of interest with tech YouTubers because they can do videos about consumer products. So it's to their advantage to make you interested in buying them. They may not be marketers from these companies, but there's always this pull on them, even if they pretend to be the voice of the people or anything. I would say even Gamers Nexus is probably guilty of this. Sorry, Steve. But there's always the conflict of interest with these influencers. Try as to whether they want to get you to want to buy stuff, because people didn't like watching videos about stuff they couldn't buy. So there's a direct connection between the audience wanting to be able to buy something and what they're making videos about. Mike says, game devs now need to make playable settings for stuff like the Steam Deck. So I think performance and integrated graphics is going to get better. Yeah, we had the Steam Deck. At the same time, Asus was getting lampooned for how they handled the burning up X3D processors. By the way, gaming processors, AMD's barking up the wrong tree. They just know that they have fanboys that'll buy whatever they put out, even if it's crap. X3D is like buying a console. It's going to be amazing when it comes out, like the 7800 and the 5800 are now, but they're going to age more poorly because of the different architecture and the limits to overclocking potential on the Vcache. The limits and the need to be more careful with an X3D processor so you don't have a situation like these 7800s is undoubtedly going to make those things age poorer than their more comprehensive counterparts. And that's one of the key reasons why I bought a comprehensive CPU instead of a gaming processor. Plus, I also watched a lot of videos from testing games comparing the CPU overhead that was available with when playing these games. And I noticed that I tried running the math and stuff, but the comprehensive processors with more cores kept winning. So in a streaming situation, which is something we saw in the early days of Ryzen, slower cores, yes, but more cores means better multitasking. So, we're in a situation now where gaming isn't just gaming. You're running Discord, maybe you're watching a YouTube video or something like that, or you're watching someone stream while you're playing the game they're streaming. Who knows? Maybe you're a jerk and you're stream sniping them. Maybe you're doing all that. Maybe you're working on a YouTube video and you want to play a game while crunching a video and stuff like that. And you have something like my crap-ass Corel 2020 that only uses 2 cores to render video. Woo! So I should have plenty of gaming. I bet I could stream, play a game maxed out, and render a YouTube video at the same time with this thing. And maybe jump on a VoIP call with someone for the rest of the course to have something to do. Fire up Ryzen Master to watch it all. Who knows? Dan says, I remember using APUs and integrated when I only had a laptop. It was okay. I got to play a bunch of indie games like Binding of Isaac faster than light back then. No, I want to see a world where the fact that just a CPU is good enough to game. What we call graphics cards nowadays were originally called video acceleration cards. They were hardware accelerators because the CPUs were rubbish and couldn't do what it was an offloading of graphics work onto a dedicated expansion card in the 90s. Do we still need that with all the CPU horsepower being thrown around these days and how PC gamers constantly end up with CPU cycles to spare? Do we still need that? And we're putting GPUs into chips too. Do we really still need a graphics card unless you're chasing after high settings, ray tracing, or 4K? Why can't you get basic gaming with just your processor? What's the excuse in 2023? You're getting it on your consoles. Your consoles are basically running off of APUs now. Why can't we have it on PCs? Why does there even need to be such a thing as a gaming laptop? Dan says, I don't think we need a graphics card. I think you can do like 720p 30 low on a lot of integrated graphics these days. So, woo, PS3. But there's also the issue, too, where what if your graphics card fries? I mean, even if you get an advanced replacement, you're still got a certain amount of time when you don't have a graphics card. You should be able to like watch YouTube, watch Netflix, or browse the web or something like that on that computer. That's why I don't buy these processors that don't come with integrated graphics. It's good to have a backup that'll still run the system while your graphics card is down and maybe even play games in low mode. Plus, you see what low mode looks like these days? I was running Forza Horizon 5 in very low mode and I forgot I had it. And I'm like, are my glasses right? Was my graphics card acting up? There's little artifacts here and there that aren't normally. Oh yeah, it's still in very low mode and I'm just now noticing it. I should do some comparisons on that. Either videos or streams, one of those two. But just to showcase, what it means to game in low mode nowadays. It's one of the things I want to work on for my setup too. Have a 2 PC setup so I can record one with another and like see what my laptop can do or see what integrated graphics of this thing can do or whatever. So, either way, tech video people ruined their corner of YouTube. I think we do have some show and tell for that. Let's get that all queued up here. We're going to have to bounce between Firefox and Chrome. But let's begin with the remaining. Let's begin with this situation here. So, This is a picture that was going around Twitter. Every single yellow tagged motherboard of these motherboards, not just Asus, every single yellow tagged motherboard's a return. And all these people returning Asus motherboards because of what happened with Gamers Nexus and the other stuff in the BIOS updates, stuff like that. And even though Asus is working on upgrades and other stuff that works better and new BIOSes that make this better, just got to say, remember, folks, the internet is very good at creating vocal minorities. Asus brings in $11 billion in revenue every year. That's bigger than Newegg. Some angry people on the internet, they're not going to move the needle. The internet is exactly the place where extremism gets blown up to the point where it looks mainstream. But these hotheads who are mass returning all of these Asus boards, saddling this Micro Center with a ton of B stock, you know, as if Asus isn't going to work on a better working BIOS solution now that people have gotten angry with them. Seriously. You want to be a jackass about it, RMA it, especially when they had that disclaimer on the BIOS. Like, oh, you're going to put a disclaimer on the BIOS? Well, screw you, Asus. You're footing the bill when this thing burns my chip. I think that Gamers Nexus and everybody who blindly watches tech tubers went way overboard with this. Because you know what? It wasn't just Asus that did this. Gigabyte was caught with the same exact problem. And I can tell you, I've run into corporate laziness from Gigabyte more than I've run into from Asus in the last 10 years. I stopped using Gigabyte stuff because of what I've experienced and also what some of my colleagues experienced, some other people on YouTube, people I used to podcast with, noting that Gigabyte was turning into this lazy company that built a gaming brand and then rested on their laurels, assuming that they could wiggle their way out of supporting their products and customers properly because, oh, it's just a bunch of kids building computers. What do they know? One of those deals. Asus started doing this more recently than Gigabyte, which is one of the key reasons. Before any of this X3D crap happened, I already had decided I was not using an Asus motherboard or a Gigabyte motherboard in whatever my next system was going to be. So I poked around and found MSI. They've had some problems too, but their problems were further back than what I've seen from Gigabyte, what I've seen from Asus. My first motherboard was the Asus K7M for the original HP. Custom made for HP, of course. But this was the original K7M. It was the original motherboard. I had Asus. Skylake motherboard, Asus. Best motherboards I've had, Asus. Current graphics card, Asus. They added a competitive price point, and I wanted a 3060 Ti. Factory overclocked, by the way. So I can get more than stock performance out of it. I don't like overclocking a lot, but I'll take a factory overclock, which is what I did with the Skylake chip. But this, what is this? What is this? Undoubtedly, by the time this inventory gets cycled, and it's all that extra labor for Micro Center employees, all that extra crap now that Micro Center has to do, they can probably sell these in a B-stock sale and just tell their customers to update the BIOS. There'll probably be a newer BIOS that comes out that's better at clamping down the voltage, or sell it to somebody who doesn't have a freaking X3D chip. You know? The numbers coming out were stating that this burned processor thing was actually less of a thing with the comprehensive processors. Just a matter of watching the voltage. It's also a matter of this technology of chiplets being newer. Hey, car. Half the time I say that, I listen to the recording afterwards. The sound doesn't make it in. But it's bassy stuff coming through the house because there's a lot of people who think their car is fast because they have a hole in their exhaust and it makes noise. Vroom! I have a fast car. You have a little bubble that you bought secondhand from somebody. It's not a smart car, but it looks like a copycat of like what, Ford Fiesta or something. Trying to think of a car, one of the models I've seen recently. Like, you drive a Kia. Shut up. Hillbilly stuff aside. Hillbilly stuff aside, though. These are the kinds of know-it-alls that we see in the comments and tech videos. For years, I've been talking about how you get picked apart. You can't just make videos for fun anymore because some know-it-all in the comments section is going to pick everything you do apart. You did this wrong. You did that wrong. Why didn't you buy this brand? Why didn't you buy that brand? Why'd you use that processor? Why'd you use that graphics card? Why'd you get that amount of RAM? Why'd you get that speed of RAM? Why'd you use slots 1 and 2 on your motherboard for the RAM instead of 2 and 4? Why'd you do? Why don't you overclock? Build a water cooling loop. How many times have I looked around on YouTube myself or had the algorithm take me on a guided tour of people with their first PC build, and some idiot always shows up in the comments who's, I've been building computers for 10 years. You suck. Yes, they sucked. It's their first build. They don't have a freaking clue what they're doing yet. Welcome to PC building. I'm sure they're going to want to build computers again or make a YouTube video again after everybody tore them apart, or these idiots tore them apart like this, because they expect people to go from zero to hero, entitled snobs. I've been building systems for 20 years. My first system, the Silver Bullet, I didn't touch the processor. I had Multiwave install it for me with a stock cooler. Because AMDs back then had exposed dies that you could crack the die if you didn't put the CPU heatsink on correctly. I didn't want to risk it. I wanted this thing to work on the first try. So I paid a little extra to have the motherboard partially assembled. In 2005, with heat spreaders now being a thing on AMDs, I installed my first ever processor by hand. Sometimes you have to be practical. But it's like a cult on the internet of all these people that think that, number one, you go from having never built a computer before to genius with multiple years of experience. And you know what? I'd like to pretend this is all on the internet, but it's not all on the internet. There was a know-it-all I went to college with. I've told this story before. There was a guy that I went to college with during the summer of the geek, nonetheless, when I first got into PC hardware, watching the screensavers every day when I got home from work at the audiovisual office, because I stayed on campus during the summer and they put us in campus housing. I was the AV guy and I was helping with the computer upgrades. But this guy, like a little kid, saw my HP Pavilion and he was like, ha ha, HP, ha 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 ha. I was like, what? He built a new system. He was running a full tower Chief Tech Dragon era case with like 7 CD bays. One of those that was used for servers. The extra space was because he had like industrial tubing. He had plastic tubing and a Ziploc container for a custom water cooling loop. He water cooled the thing and he hung the radiator off the back outside of the case. It was a total hack job water cooling setup with a Ziploc container as the reservoir for the fluid. And he got sick of it. He built this thing. He bragged about it. It was his pride and joy. It took up like half his desk. It went way over his head because it was a full tower. And yet, he got sick of it and built a regular ATX case that summer. AMD Thunderbird Athlon. One of the AMD Athlon Thunderbirds. Unfortunately, he got a little rusty at case selection, despite being a know-it-all that he couldn't say anything to. He introduced me to Newegg, by the way. He introduced me to M-Wave. He introduced me to Newegg. He built that system with a Thunderbird processor. And he was this know-it-all, big computer guy, worked for IT, would eventually get hired on to work with the IT team after I left, and then eventually the multimedia division, running the TV studio, for Pete's sake, and the radio station. This guy picked a case. Remember, big know-it-all guy. This guy knows computers. Don't you dare try to tell him anything. He was so arrogant back then, and he is so arrogant now. I went to his LinkedIn page once. He was talking about himself in the third person. Talk about a guy with zero social skills. Freaking coconut head nerd, zero social skills. Arrogant, narcissistic, talks about himself in the third person. That's what we're talking about here. This guy picks a case with 60 millimeter case fans. 60 millimeter. He picked an Antec case with 60 millimeter case fans. At least when I bought my Chief Tech Dragon for the Silver Bullet, I had 80 mil fans, and those were loud. Dell, at the time, was selling pre-builts. One of my roommates had one. 120 millimeter fans. Quiet. While mine was like an appliance. No AMD cooling quiet yet. You had to buy a fan controller and only turn the fans down to half speed. Or 60% speed. So your choices were and or something like that. Crap. I've demonstrated that. One of the reasons I have the Vantech Stealth fans on the Silver Bullet is because everything else was too freaking noisy. But the Vantech Stealth didn't push a lot of air, so it sucked back then. But this guy managed to do worse than me. 60 millimeter fans. Then he slammed his slammed his graphics card in too hard and wondered why it wasn't working. He didn't. He just meat-handed or whatever. He just mangled those parts, putting everything together, and wondered why it didn't work on the first try. Well, I guess I got to RMA the processor. I got to RMA the graphics card. Hey, Jay, can I borrow your TNT2 card? I'm like, don't break it. Yeah, my computer's not starting on the first try. Silver Bullet did. And he actually had just the tiniest little flash of humility when he saw it running the following summer. Just thank goodness we didn't room together. Whoo! Except when we were working in the summers. So. But that guy was my first real run-in with know-it-all stuck-up technicians. And it hasn't stopped since. Fast forward to the internet era, or should I say the YouTube era, and every one of those people all around the world is now showing up in comment sections. Getting tech video people a reputation for being incredibly toxic. Let's catch up on the chat. Why didn't you go ASRock? A few people said they got better. ASRock is what is ASRock these days? Something like a bargain brand or something? No. Could have gone ASRock if I really wanted to, but I could have gone ASRock if I really wanted to, but I decided to stick with the big three for now. Plus, we're talking something I only do once every couple of years or so. So we'll see how it goes out here. People obese too much? Surely you mean obsessed too much. Dan. Mike says, the guy reminds me when I bolted a PVC pipe to the side of my old Athlon XP and connected it to a dryer duct and pulled January Canadian air from outside straight onto the CPU. Dan says, full ATX, wow. Mike says, that's how we Canadians used to overclock and cool our systems. Well, it's cool enough in the wintertime. You need block heaters in the cars. We get that a couple of weeks in Connecticut, maybe. I probably would have bought a pre-built in the 2000s. Yeah. Well, technically, my HP was a pre-built. It was build to order from Best Buy, and the power supply was crap. Didn't make it past sophomore year, and then Best Buy blew me off when we paid that money for the service plan and tried to invoke it. Oops. I've told that story already, though. Either way. So let's get back to our discussion here. This is one of the reasons why I'm going to do commentary videos, because the streams are always way too rambly. So these people are out there, they're giving tech video people a bad reputation. They're giving us a reputation for being people more apt to criticize people's hardware rather than buy it. So now we're in this wonderful world where the brands are reconsidering who they actually work with. This is something Frame Chaser guy was talking about, but I can tell you I've been dealing with this probably longer than he has. When did he start his channel? Let me go to Firefox here. Well, actually, no. Another great example of getting picked apart wasn't me this time. It was the Toasty Bros. They have some little cheapo PC that they built. Looks pretty. They have this little. It's called "We Built Our Cleanest Gaming Setup Yet." It's a cute little Apple-inspired light mode PC with like white case, blue LEDs, da-da-da. It looks like an Apple product, except it's a PC. And for some reason, the processor with the stock cooler was running 90 degrees when gaming. I joked with dad humor, like I usually do, about how Intel maybe they should make crock pots. This guy shows up, stock cooler and all the fans taking the air out. Not sure why they went with negative pressure, but oh well. Two guys that run a computer store getting picked apart by some rando. The problem that so many of these people don't understand. Let me mute this tab as well. The problem these people don't understand is that YouTube has built-in accountability for comments. All I have to do is click the @name, which they've doubled down on this even more. And I see that this guy has 260 subscribers, 117 videos. His whole channel's in Spanish, so Spanish speaking, that doesn't mean anything. It's just I don't understand half the stuff, except for a couple of words in Spanish I know, which tell me, and the context, which tells me he's reviewing hardware here, he's doing a gaming test there. But he's only been YouTubing for 2 years. And he's only been YouTubing for 2 years, and he wants to try and make two guys that not only are much larger YouTubers, but run their own computer store. He's trying to talk down about them? Okay. But this is what you run into. I might use Google. He doesn't have a description, otherwise use Google Translate on it. But this guy showed up, and I'm like, who cares? These are the guys that are actually building practical systems. And then there's this comment from Monolith the Next Generation. Couldn't enjoy the video. Just, oh, the heat pipes are higher than the fan. And I give him a smart-ass response, because that's what I do nowadays when these people show up, if I give him a response at all. Oh, fair. Then he tries to be a walking encyclopedia and tell me I get a Hyper 212 Evo instead of something like a Peerless Assassin or something like that. But I can't just make videos without someone from this group showing up. But the thing is, my channel's small time. I get some of this once every so often. The big YouTubers get way more of this. There's more people, you'll see more comments. And it's not necessarily the biggest names. It's like when the Linus fanboys went around bashing people who weren't using Noctua fans. It's what, about 10 years ago now? That's actually how I was introduced to Linus Tech Tips, and one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of watching his videos, besides his smug attitude and the way he treats his people, the way he treats his audience sometimes. But hey, his audience hasn't exactly been the cream of the crop. Not exactly the best and the brightest. There were mobs of Linus fans that went around YouTube in the early 2010s making fun of people who didn't want to use Noctua fans. Fanboys about fans. Lovely. What hath the internet wrought? So the computer fans are the reason why you get bashed on the internet. Woo! Lovely. Of all things to pick fights on the internet about, computer fans. Have you looked at the numbers? Have you compared the numbers and the airflow? I mean, cooling and thermal compound, heat sinks and thermal compounds have done more for my processor than what fans I had. The fans, it's just good if they're there. The machine I have, Monolith is running the same Fractal Venturis that I installed in like 2015 or something, Venturi Highway in the Sunshine or whatever. They came over from Tuxedo. So I already had them by the time I was building Monolith. And of course, if I want to go from 3-watt fans to 2.4-watt fans, get the calculator. I don't have a shortcut for it yet. Oops. I just redid this machine. That's right. So, if I want to go from 3-watt 3-watt fans down to 2.4-watt fans for a difference of 0.6 watts per fan times 3, because I have 2 in the back, 2 in the front, 1 in the back, and shave just shy of 2 watts off of the operating wattage of this system, I can switch to Noctua. And that's at full speed, by the way. Only during the hottest months of the year do I run the fans at full speed. Most of the time, the front fans are half speed. The primary purpose of the front fans is to put airflow over the serial ATA drives, which don't see as much action as they used to. Now it's about running air through the case, because this thing has 4 M2 slots on it. So M2's faster, put heat sinks on them, upgrade the heat sinks if I want to. They use thermal pads, upgrade the heat sinks if I want to from aluminum to copper or something and see what temps I can get with them. But, I mean, there are SSD heat sinks that look like CPU heat sinks now with heat pipes and the whole 9 yards. Don't know if I need to go there yet. Maybe in a generation or two. But, seriously. So, now imagine all of this toxic crap. All of this toxic crap. How's my PowerPoint looking? Imagine all of this toxic garbage. And then, sign in to set up Office. Okay. There's a way. Shut up. Shut up, Microsoft. I'm going to hit the kill switch. Your PowerPoint is unlicensed because I'm not signed in. I got it working without being signed in last time. I just took my sign on from, end task. See ya. We're not going to use PowerPoint for this. But remember people doing the Noctua fan thing, says Dan. Miss Little Shops in the 2000 with custom build stuff for you. Oh, there was one of them in my area. They ran me out. He ran me out the door because I wasn't an Intel fanboy and I was using an AMD processor. Either way. So you multiply this by all these people. And then you got to start asking yourself, if you're the brands, who do you want to do business with? In this day and age where a much more casual audience represents millions of people. Take people that watch XQC, for example. Now, Twitch, let me just look at his Sully gnome for XQC. XQC, most popular streamer on Twitch most of the time. Give me last 90 days for this guy. I'll do last 180 days. He's trending upwards in terms of viewership. To the tune of 50,000 concurrents to 60,000 concurrents, representing hundreds of thousands of hours worth of watch time, sometimes cracking the 1 million mark. Now, Twitch used to have stuff that converted your average viewers, your concurrents, to what the views were. That was removed from the API. I'm wondering what that would be nowadays. But if you have the choice, this is something that Frame Chaser guy was talking about. If you have the choice of doing business with a gamer who's going to use your product as part of a product agreement, get it installed, probably have professional help installing it if it's a big graphics card or something to make sure it's ready for stream. But you have a gamer playing hours and hours of Fortnite or something, or PUBG or whatever, or Hogwarts or ESO or World of Warcraft or whatever, in a sponsored stream, hardware sponsor, no annoying download Raid Shadow Legends and get to level 8. No. Think some kind of regular plugs for the graphics card. We're running this with a 4090 from Gigabyte. And it's a gamer who doesn't want to pick the hardware apart, who doesn't even have a compelling interest in picking the hardware apart unless it crashes. So this person Do you sign a deal with somebody like this? Or do you sign a deal with somebody like Linus Tech Tips or Jay's 2 Cents or Hardware Unboxed or any of these folks who has a compelling interest in reviewing the unit and potentially generating negative press for your product? Let me look that up. Which streamer did Linus do a collab with? Was it Pokimane? Because I can tell you that Linus's take about Twitch ad. No, they argued with each other about Twitch ads here. Who did Linus do a collab with? He went on a streamer's stream. Who was he with? Either XQC. There he is. Yeah, Linus Tech Tips did a collab with XQC, the guy whose Sully Gnome numbers we were just looking at here. February 6, 2023, off of Dexerto. Linus Tech Tips building a PC on XQC's stream is one of the most unexpected collabs. No, it's not an unexpected collab. It's Linus runs a media business, and it's his job to know where the industry is going so he doesn't go out of business. And the truth is, brands are the reason why YouTube has the problems with demonetization and stuff. Brands are the ones that are super finicky about what gets advertised where. So now knowing that brands are super defensive and super finicky with what some of the biggest streamers on Twitch, who are also multi-platform personalities, by the way, XQC can show up anywhere he wants and probably get recognized. Pokimane can probably do it. Dr. Disrespect can do it, except he was banned off Twitch. You have these gamers out there that you can ink a deal with, maybe send a professional installer to get them up and running, and they run your hardware while they play their games. And it says, powered by Gigabyte or whatever. And there's some kind of agreement that basically tells the viewers that there's a paid promotion and that the game today is running off of the newest 4090 from blah blah. Or the newest, 7900 XTX or whatever the Radeon flagship is. It isn't really a flagship because Radeon doesn't have a flagship, because AMD doesn't really want to challenge NVIDIA as much as they should. So look, you put it all together, and tech nerds are known for being turbulent versus more casual people who will just buy a graphics card because of the brand. They'll buy an Asus card because it's Asus. They'll buy a Gigabyte card because Gigabyte, or they'll buy it because it was on sale at Best Buy, or they'll buy it because, someone they watched said it was good. Where do you think the dollars are going to go to? So I have to wonder about folks like Jay's 2 Cents, folks like Linus Tech Tips, folks like Austin Evans. What are these people, even Gamers Nexus, what are these people going to do next? Because the world is changing. The world is changing now that the whole pandemic thing is. See, the thing is, YouTube videos were subject to the same rules as Twitch streams during the pandemic. But 365 days, Sully Gnome, entire site's numbers on Twitch. XQC, of course, even he's down 24% in terms of hours watched. He's down 24% in terms of hours watched as this world changes. But still the most popular over on Twitch. 21 million out, down 7.5% over the last 365 days. Average viewers down 7.5%. They can still do special events like esports tournaments and stuff and get some viewership there. There's also people buying into the Twitch, what Twitch sells you, trying to stream. So even though they lost a lot of Twitch affiliates, they're netting over the past 365 days about 7% more streams going live. Which, could be alt channels. I mean, AI, for example, we talked about the whole thing with Athene earlier. He has multiple channels on Twitch that correspond to different AIs. He has AI Heroes. He has Athene Live when he does updates. He has AI Jesus. He has AI Carly G, who is like George Carlin, but female, basically. He started with George Carlin, but then had the character pick a VTuber avatar and change their voice. So, then gone totally different direction since then, to where it's not really... It doesn't look like George Carlin anymore because of the way the AI has developed itself. And then there's a SpongeBob stream, too, for whatever reason. AI SpongeBob in Minecraft. More games being streamed, viewer ratios dropping though. If this is the lockdown world going away, we've watched streamers decline, we've watched Twitch decline, and YouTube has had some problems as well. People aren't stuck indoors all the time anymore. Like COVID in New England is mostly XBBs. I've already had XBB 1.5, and I'm just going to get the next vaccine that comes out. Every time there's a new COVID shot available, I'm just going to get whatever it is, So, COVID dwindled down even before the federal emergency was sunsetted. I'm still watching on COVID Act now. There's not much COVID here in Connecticut. The community transmission plummeted. The hospitals emptied out. We couldn't take cases seriously because people are sick of COVID. But people are sick of COVID in the general populace. But if you want to know you have it, there's still tests you can buy. But there's all this... things are very much in decline here in New England. Not so much in other parts of the country, but here in New England, so much in decline that I haven't worn a mask to work in weeks. Because under the guidance that I was following, I wouldn't have had to. The community transmission was moderate or low. Now I'm thinking I'm just going to go off of what's going around and what happens if the hospitals start filling up. I might put a mask on in order to try not to get that crap again. But it's just not like it was even after Omicron. There was a bowl, so to speak, and then everything came back up by the summertime. But everything's XBB. Everything's XBB. So it's kind of having a hard time infecting people when most people have had an XBB at some point in the past several months. It's going to take a totally different variant or whatnot to freak out the government again and maybe consider some measures or a new shot or whatever it is. But, the world is changing. Let's also not forget with COVID, one of the big things that made it as deadly as it was nobody had any immunity to it of any kind. It was a completely new, what was called the novel coronavirus back in 2020. It was new, is the equivalent of like the smallpox blanket thing with, the Native Americans and the settlers. Well, we were basically sitting ducks to that thing. So it did its thing and then it evolved to be more transmissible. And it evolved to be more transmissible and stuff like that. But COVID, it's pretty much a thing where it's already peaked. Depending on where you live, there might still be some of it going around. But at this point in Connecticut, especially my part of Connecticut out here in the woods, if you get COVID again, you're an unlucky bastard. That's basically it. You should not go to the casino. You just have really dumb luck. That's what it boils down to. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like when we had that lull in 2021. Wrong place, wrong person, wrong time, COVID. Bingo. But that's it. I mean, I think the world is returning to some form of normalcy. Still some crap out there that you can catch, but it's not like it was a year or two ago. You'd have to be super paranoid, psyching yourself out on the internet to see that. So the world's changing. Online media is changing. And unfortunately, I think tech videos are going to change too, because it's time. The brands, I think, are going to change where they send their money. The pandemic brought, into the mainstream one of the reasons why Twitch had that big spike in viewership and why people were watching streams and stuff like that who previously might not have watched streams before. One of the side effects of that was there's a new kind of influencer who it's just someone you watch for entertainment. They don't have to really give a darn about reviewing products. They don't have to. They can just use stuff and maybe just get rid of it and get something else. There might even be a clause in the contract that says that they quietly part ways with the hardware if it's not up to their standards. And don't forget the spin you can put on it. If you're somebody like XQC and you're using a graphics card and you're like, I want to get rid of this thing, I want to terminate my agreement with the company and move on to something else, you can just say you're getting a graphics card upgrade. You don't have to say it sucked and it wasn't pulling its weight anymore. And it might be in your best interest, if you want to keep getting these deals, to do that. So you see where the brands are going with this? The demonetization crap on YouTube is largely because of brands and advertisers. Brands are very, very finicky, very, very picky, very, very whatever you want to call it. But that applies now to online media. So you see, for example, Gamers Nexus trying to sell stuff from their store. You see Linus Tech Tips trying to sell stuff from lttstore.com. The reason why you're going to see more of this type of merch stuff going on is because that's the only way forward for these tech videos. So what happens when they pass a point of no return in terms of the dwindling critical mass, and you start seeing Linus Media and Gamers Nexus, some of these big names in tech videos, start to have problems continuing to operate? What happens when you start seeing them have to start laying people off because things decline because the brands don't need them anymore? The pandemic brought us a more casual influencer who's just going to use the product and show it off, you know, without any risk of any negative publicity from it. Why, if you were Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, you know, Sparkle, or what, Sparkle Power still around? I don't know, I'm thinking something else. Sapphire, the Radeon graphics stuff that I was looking at earlier. Why would you even bother? Why bother running the risk of getting Jay's 2 cents mad at your product and making a big video? Or Gamers Nexus? And why? You want to you want to render somebody like Steve Burke irrelevant if you're a marketing manager at Asus. That's what you want to do. And what does all this tie back to? Some of it ties back to accountability and stuff that is morally correct, like making sure companies aren't ripping us off. But go back 20 years to that stuck-up guy I was talking about earlier. These know-it-alls who can't, you know, who get upset about details, who get upset about your CPU being overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz instead of 4.8 gigahertz, who get upset about what brand of video card you have, and stuff that fundamentally doesn't matter. There is a general level of performance you can get with today's hardware, no matter what brand you buy, unless you do something incredibly stupid with how you snap everything together. You're going to get something that has some pretty serious oomph to it. I mean, have you not noticed that with these companies quietly trying to raise the prices of what they sell to make more money off of consumers? There isn't a Ryzen 3 yet for the 7000 series. That's one of the reasons why I was a little conservative with my processor and bought a comprehensive processor instead of an X3D. The BIOS on my motherboard was from 6 months ago. November, December, January, February, March, April, May. I had the November BIOS. They've added support for new CPUs, including the 7800X3D since then. What if I bought a motherboard where the BIOS from the factory was too old to run my processor? Now I have to buy a Ryzen 5 7600 cheapo comprehensive processor for 200 something, whereas a Core i3 12100 whatever is $100. See what I mean? It's a very serious risk. What if there's compatibility issues between your motherboard and the processor because sales are declining for PCs and the inventory is not moving as quickly? That's also a problem with AMD, by the way. Oh, you can upgrade your processor. Yeah, but where do you start? What do you do? What do you do if you buy a wonderful AMD motherboard and the BIOS is too old to support the processor you want to run? It's not a good idea to incrementally purchase things and get what you can afford as opposed to what you actually want, because then you end up having to figure out what to do with the crap stuff. And you spend more money than you would have spent otherwise in the long run. Like many people say, you know, you have to be rich to be poor. So that's the world we live in. What do we have here? Tag says, elitist attitudes over petty crap like fan brands give me anxiety back in the days. No joke. Yeah, that's how I was introduced to Linus Tech Tips. That's his brand. That was his brand, or at least the way I was introduced to it. That's my first impressions of Linus Tech Tips is, oh, he must be a jackass because look at all these people going around giving him the irate gamer treatment. For those of you who don't get the reference, irate gamer fans were often worse than the irate gamer with the way they treated people on the internet. They made the irate gamer look bad. AVGN had this problem too, with people going around accusing everybody who made a video game review in the 2000s of being an AVGN ripoff. You know, Dan says, like mine, I bought a 3000 series because 5000 wasn't out yet. So yeah, this all boils back to tech elitism. Little things that have added up over the years. Little things that have added up over the years. And I can tell you there already have been tech YouTubers that have been complaining about declining views. Paul's Hardware was one of them. And I got sick of hearing him complain. Guy with hundreds of thousands of subs can get thousands of views per video. I'm like, look, you can't ride the Newegg train forever. At some point, you gotta, build, carve your own path. Then there was Joanne Tech Lover. She stopped her YouTube channel at 100,000 subs. Okay, that's good enough. Then she did Twitch streaming, and now she's been affected by the decline post-pandemic, if you want to call it that, where she's like a Twitch affiliate with like 12 concurrents. From 100,000 subs on YouTube to 12 concurrents on Twitch in the span of whatever years it was. Until she gets turbulent about it. See, that's part of the reason why I'm mostly watching AIs on Twitch these days. I don't know what human beings I can still watch. I really don't want to be caught up in someone crying because they don't get the numbers they used to, because the world has changed and is continuing to change. So maybe this could end up as a boon for those of us who do tech videos because we want to, or people that make non-Linus videos. Folks like myself, Druaga, Greenham. Is Druaga even still around? I haven't watched one of his videos in too long. B Bishop PCM, I know, does stuff. He also does little chat streams every so often. I can never catch them because I want to watch the streams in DVR mode, and he keeps turning off. He keeps deleting them when he's done with them. Like, I'd love to watch B Bishop PCM talk about computers one of these days, but he doesn't leave his stream replays around because some goofballs on YouTube growth gurus or whatever say, don't keep your stream replays around for your fans. They're not going to care about your shit. This isn't Twitch. Streaming fundamentally works different on here. Gotten some single-digit concurrence as I've been doing this, but I know there's a bunch of people that will watch after the fact, and there could be people right now who are not going to talk in the chat because they showed up late and they rewound the stream and are watching in DVR mode. I have that turned on, right? Because I want that as an option for people. Yep, it's on. I'm not going to turn it off either. I'm not going to be a jerk and try to force people to watch live. It's also why, even though the thing goes unlisted while I'm working on the clickable program guide, it, it's also why, I don't do like converting it to a video very much anymore. Dan says, I watch my friends on Twitch. Druaga hasn't made a video in a year, mostly collab. Yeah, well, there's only so many videos you can make before your videos start blending together. It's one of the reasons why the tech videos is just going to be, what I'm doing right now. I'm not going to go too out of my way to do stuff because the numbers tell me the algorithm doesn't know what to do with those things. I'm too far off the beaten path of commentaries or tech reviews or whatever. The algorithm doesn't know what to do with it. A lot of the traffic usually comes from people that like them already. There's very little in terms of growth there, and it's very much a legacy format. The Wacky World of Multimedia J is 10 years old this year, 2013. I'm not making a big deal about it because I think I stuck my nose in the air enough already when I was like, I've been YouTubing for 10 years back in 2016. I think I've done enough of that. But yeah, and now, of course, what do we have for lifetime? 2.5 hours. There you go. Number one reason why I want to get into commentary videos where I'm going to use the stream gear, similar to what who are some guys that do it? Tech Yes City does it. I think Paul does it too. It's one of the reasons why I want to just do boom, 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 talk about stuff. Don't need to put a bunch of calls to action and don't need to have sponsors or anything. Just say my piece, so to speak. Now, throw in my opinion, like vlogging used to be back in the day. It's interesting, if you keep it simple, you have a format these days that is very similar to what YouTube used to be. Webcam, what you have to say. Listenable is like the tag that YouTube might put on it nowadays. But I'm not even playing music or anything. I'm just talking about stuff. But obviously this is too long for someone to really do much with without a clickable program guide. And yeah, it's the sort of thing where if you like listen to a podcast or something like that. But yeah, the world has changed. And what a lot of it was powered by was our own arrogance. Look, brands are going to do things differently. They don't need us anymore. They don't need Linus anymore. They don't need Jay's 2 cents anymore. They don't need the tech deals guy anymore, who, by the way, outed himself as a pompous jackass on Twitch, so I'm never watching tech deals ever again. Guys making fun of first-time homeowners because they got snookered by the fine print in a generation where homeownership has silently become a luxury. If you're somebody with a successful YouTube channel and you're one of the big names on tech on here and you're stomping on the little guy like that, no thanks. The tech deals guy made the same mistake as all of those two-faced Twitch streamers who are one way on camera and another way on Twitter. The algorithms on Twitter introduced me to his tweets. And that's when I found out that this guy has no clue how to stay consistent. He goes off on wild tangents that have nothing to do with technology and outs some of his personality traits that he doesn't show on camera. So no, I'm never watching the tech deals guy ever again. I've done comparisons with the Delosauruses he had years ago, but I'm done. There's plenty of people to watch, and I have my own stuff to work on. I don't need to put up with folks with baggage or folks that look like they're two-faced like that. I don't need to deal with that. I'll listen to pundits. I'll even listen to guys like Frame Chaser guy that I sharply disagree with on a lot of major issues, including issues related to content creation and the multimedia meta. I don't believe in banning someone automatically who doesn't have hardware to test stuff, for one great example of that. So, looking to get into commentary, especially with the summer coming up, things getting hotter, doing more with the streaming gear, which has sound noise blockers so I can run the AC without there being an issue. We're going to put the fan back. I had to borrow it for a bit because I had a foot injury, so I had to fire air at my fan to keep it cool at night until the swelling went down. Kind of like a pneumatic replacement for an ice pack, basically. But summer's coming, and we're going to need to use noise blockers again. So you're going to see commentaries from me that I'm going to use the streaming stuff in order to make. So hopefully people don't just mass abandon that because it's not like tinkering with the same computers over and over again. But I want to get more stuff involved, and I want to talk about stuff. Think like Tech Syndicate when it was Logan and Wendell before they split up. So something like that. Have a bit of a darker edge to that. Chime in on things. This is kind of like what Review Tech USA is doing, except I'm not going to be as whatever you want to call it, with him and the chickens and, the light reflecting off his bald head. Stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit closer to Dr. Disrespect in terms of style. Yeah. Anyways, I don't pretend to drive Lamborghinis in a green screen, though. That's what Forza's for. 8:33 at the Geek House. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this available to watch. We'll put the clickable program guide in later because I'm probably going to feel like just zonking tomorrow, and we'll figure out what we want to do for the hardware. So I want to conclude the season of the Wacky World of Multimedia J before summer gets here, and then we'll do up. Whoa, we just had some drop frames for the first time all stream. My preview just started. Went to a slideshow for a split second. Or is there something running that I don't know about, or some weird thing on the motherboard? Maybe the RAM flaked, who knows? But no drop frames, though. So maybe I was having CPU issues when I was maxing the processor, and that was leading to a lag going out to the internet. I don't even have the fiber yet. So summer's coming. There's going to be more work going on, so there's going to be more ways to make money. We're probably going to have more overtime this year because we only have one shift if I stay with these folks. So I'm dealing with a lot of people who start drama about stupid stuff, and I might just go somewhere else that's more mellow at the rate things are going. But one thing at a time here. I got to figure out what I want to do. In the meantime, though, let's see what we can do with this new system. I want to learn how it runs. I want to get game streaming working too, because game streaming gets noise blockers as well. So we can show off the incredible looking Forza, maybe play. We can actually stream Hogwarts Legacy now. I got it going at 1080p 60 on high settings. The settings on that game scale with your graphics card. So VRAM is going to be the issue, but I'm running 1080p, so I don't need to max the textures all the way. I don't need to load 4K textures when I have a 1080p TV. And no, much of the world can still do just fine with 1080p. And Steam hardware survey, by the way. Most popular setup is 1080p with an RTX 3060. I think actually one of the cheaper cards took the crown again. It was RTX 3060 for a while, but who's counting? Either way. So that's where we're going with this. There'll be more commentaries about talking about tech stuff, things along those lines. Hey, the lava lamp finally warmed up and started doing something. Been having problems with that lately. Probably because I'm not running it long enough for it to heat up. Hey, well, summer's coming, you know? So either way. Anybody wants to say anything else in the chat, go right ahead. Otherwise, I got to get to sleep. We'll leave this up as is and work on a clickable program guide later. I might just listen to this and put in the chapters while I'm hooning around on Forza. So we'll put the thing up on Twitter and stuff like that. We got to wait for it to finish processing before I can set a thumbnail besides the generic Multimedia J thing. But yeah, the new computer works. I'm not quitting tech videos. The story will continue. But don't expect much for innovation from this because I think we've pretty much set what we want from all of this. So I am probably going to do one last intro to turn this thing legacy. And then, well, you folks at least will pretty much know what to expect. That's the pattern that this series has settled down into. It's nice seeing more people watching them more recently, though. Maybe the YouTube algorithm's finally figuring out what to do with these stupid things. But I know full well that I am very far off the beaten path, not following the SOPs that the growth gurus would want me to do. But that's because I respect my audience. I don't want to have stuff that doesn't age well because it's constantly getting interrupted by segues to our sponsor. There's just too many commercial influences that are messing with the tech videos that you're watching on YouTube these days. And you know what? The bill has come due for that. Things are going to change, and you're going to see some big names retire or in some other way change what they do. Because fundamentally, the brands and the money that makes some of these places, some of these folks viable is going in different directions nowadays. Expect to see more of that. That's the world we live in. And enjoy the new graphics. Enjoy the new graphics on the music, by the way. Spectralizer is obsolete in OBS. Its successor is called Waveform, and that's why this is going to look more like a stereo when I'm playing music. So tempted to do Multimedia J radio style with that going for EQ as well. So many ideas, but one thing at a time here. First, I have to do something about the stuff that's been sitting around waiting to be made into tech videos that's not being addressed. One of them includes mobile devices, by the way. So I'm missing a couple of mobile devices other than my main phone because of that. And we'll just progress things forward. Definitely not going to do as much streaming as before, though, except game streams. There's not really much other than talking with chat that chat streams are really good for. So congratulations, Harris Heller. You finally convinced me to do streams the way you do them. But hey, things change. And sure, maybe there's some arrogant know-it-alls that have smeared the wonderful name of technology and dragged it through the mud to the point where brands are now focusing on different kinds of influencers, to the point where an entire scene on YouTube might be getting disrupted by it. But that's the way things are. The only thing consistent sometimes in this world is change. And what matters is how you react to it and deal with it. Same thing with AI. Whatever AI is going to do is going to change things. But I think AI, like other computer stuff, will be a lowest common denominator that human beings can still add some pizzazz to. We just got to see what that lowest common denominator is. 8:39 at the Geek House. I'm stuck on day shift for the time being, so business as usual. Gotta call it a night. So thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks to everybody who stopped by. Those of you folks stopping by after the fact. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because there will be activity on this channel. I got a new computer that I got to show, what I've been doing, besides some dopey little screenshots before and after the upgrade. There's way more that I need to figure out how to display on here and see what streaming technology is available too, with the upgrades YouTube is making later this year. Till next time, this is Multimedia J signing off. Thanks for stopping by.